Chapter 666. The Allied Forces Appear. Chapter 666. The Allied Forces Appear. Li Guang took a look at the displayed images, his expression solemn as he asked, "Leader, what do we do now?" The Outer Mongolia had deployed 30,000 soldiers to attack Yuzhong. They had obviously received support from the Kingdom of God. Not only were their troops stacked, they had the backup of helicopters, tanks and armored vehicles. This was an enemy not to be underestimated. Yuzhong could defeat Huaran was because the 30 assault helicopters in his arsenal played a huge role. Without them, he could not have done so easily. Yuzhong replied, "I shall lead the troops personally to wipe them out." This battle would decide the master of the Central Plains. Should Yuzhong lose, then the authority would fall to the Outer Mongolia, and he was not willing to let them happen. Out on the Central Plains, the 30,000 troop was currently charging forth. Within the troops, there were 6 armored vehicles that was dragging along a converted caravan that was 20 m long, 20 m wide and 6 m tall, with 6 wheels underneath. Such a luxurious converted caravan had no market in the past, because the roads could not possibly accommodate such measurements. However, on the Central Plains, it was possible to utilize it. Inside the caravan, the interior design was lavish, and the floor was covered with expensive Persian rugs, while beautiful paintings hung all around. Even the roof had a crystal chandelier. A blonde-haired, blue-eyed man with extremely good looks sipped red wine while sitting on a sofa. Beside him, 2 beautiful women with only a silk cloth covering them sat while massaging his legs. Another 2 were helping him knead his shoulders. One Busta babe kneeled in front of him while feeding him fruits carefully. This man was enjoying himself as though he was the ruler of a nation, indulging in the services of the 5 ladies as well as their mesmerizing smiles. He eyed a beautiful lady sitting opposite him, who was dressed in tight leather clothes, her hair tied up in a single ponytail, and her figure not losing out to any of the beauties present. Her exquisite features were radiating out a cold that seemed to freeze anyone who got too close. He spoke, "Lena, relax a little. It's hard to get a break like this. Why don't you just enjoy the scenery?" Lena glanced at Harriman coldly. "Harriman, our mission is to eradicate Yuzhong and destroy his factions out here. If you fool around so much that you let him go, the elders will not let you off." This handsome man and incredibly sexy woman with a sword-like aura were the strongest apostles of the Kingdom of God, Harriman and Lena. Besides them, there were 4 other people by their sides each, a total of 6 men and 2 women. They were the divine envoys brought along by the 2 of them. Harriman chuckled and poured the wine in his hand over the beauty beside him. The Elder Council? How would they question an apostle over a small matter like this? Furthermore, Yuzhong is just some yellow-skinned monkey that got lucky. Any apostle can take him down without trouble. The Elder Council actually sent 2 apostles. They're surely overestimating this monkey. As the wine in the glass poured over the beauty, the rest of the ladies began to lick it off her. This was something that Harriman loved to see. He liked to watch these beauties behaving like dogs. Although he might smile with extreme warmth, he could likewise flip and slap a woman to death. When the apocalypse happened, Harriman had not yet awakened as an evolver. He was betrayed by his pretty girlfriend for a piece of bread. He almost died at the jaws of a zombie. Ever since then, he loved to torture pretty women, treating them like dogs. Lena frowned when she watched him. After all, she was a woman. Seeing him step on and humiliate those women, she was extremely unhappy. Furthermore, she could detect his wild gaze roaming all over her at times, as though he wanted to do the same to her. In truth, if it wasn't for her strength and her worth, she would have long since become a plaything for the upper echelons of the Kingdom of God as well. One of the divine envoys, who was black, looked at Lena, his eyes filled with lust. "Esteemed apostle, we have satellites. Yuzhong's every move would not be able to escape our sight. Whatever they might be planning, they won't be able to escape what's coming for them. This battle, since we have already made the decision to wipe them out, they've no way of running. His best option is to disassemble his troops and head for the mountain ranges. In modern warfare, intelligence was vital. With the satellites in their control, the kingdom of God could easily spy on any part of the world. Regardless of where Yuzhong wanted to attack, it would all be laid bare by the satellite. Furthermore, the 30,000 Mongolians were stacked with the help of the kingdom of God, and thus they were filled with confidence. Even Lena did not truly believe that they would lose. She was just seeking an excuse to admonish Harriman. Harriman watched the 5 beauties struggle to lick the wine, and he laughed, before taking a syringe from a box beside him and injected himself. "Let's go." Lena looked at the syringe and her face changed, quickly leaving. What Harriman had injected himself with was poison. After he had become an apostle, he had already enjoyed all there was to enjoy on the face of earth. Thus, in his void, he had chosen to use poison to get his high. He would become a sick pervert when he injected himself, becoming uncontrollable. Lena did not want to converse with him any longer when he was in that condition. Lena led her 4 divine envoys and left the room, going to their own places. Soon after, there was the sound of clothes ripping and the moans of the women from Harriman's room. Chapter 667. The Tyrannical Apostles. Chapter 667. The Tyrannical Apostles. Within a forest of about 10 li away from the outer Mongolian troops, Yuzhong had draped a layer of grass over him, as he observed the surroundings quietly. Behind him, there were 1,000 elite soldiers and 3,000 Traians. Yuzhong knew about the satellites of the Kingdom of God since a long time ago. Whatever actions he took, he knew it was hard to hide from the satellite. However, the movement of any mutant life forms in the night was able to evade the satellite. Furthermore, the 1,000 elite soldiers had spread out and gathered at this location from different locations under Yuzhong's orders. If it were a large army, there was no way he could have avoided the satellites. However, if he didn't use any tanks, armored vehicles or assault helicopters, it was still possible to proceed. Right now, the sky had turned dark due to night, and a shadow appeared suddenly, revealing herself to Yuzhong. It was precisely the beautiful but emotionless Tenpyo Saka. She spoke coldly, "There are no problems." Tenpyo Saka specialized in assassination, and was a top-notch recon soldier in the night. After the enhancement from the God and Devil system, she had gained plenty of skills and techniques, becoming one of the top 10 recon soldiers in Yuzhong's troop. "Do it." Yuzhong glanced at Bai Lu as he ordered. She closed her eyes, and a spiritual wave radiated out, before she opened them and pointed to the camp of the outer Mongolians. The 3,000 Traians surged forward silently, making their way towards the Mongolian camp. Yuzhong himself led the 1,000 elites and launched a sudden attack. If it were a frontal assault, Yuzhong was not confident that he could win the numerous tanks and assault helicopters prepared by the Kingdom of God. He only had a chance with a night raid. The 10 Type 3 Traians were like a gust of wind that swiftly entered the camp and swiped their claws, beheading numerous Mongolian soldiers. 8 high-level Traians tore apart the defense line of the camp. A large number of Traians as well as the 1,000 elites immediately charged right into the camp and started slaughtering any living things they saw. The sounds of gunshots rang out throughout the camp, and the entire place was thrown into chaos. Many soldiers rushed out from their camps, their expressions full of fear as they ran around like headless flies. The outer Mongolia had been peaceful for a long period of time, and the soldiers were mostly ordinary citizens. After the apocalypse, due to the sparse population over a wide spread of space, many of them had survived. They were unlike the soldiers under Yuzhong, who had to fight many battles to survive, accumulating experience. Furthermore, a night raid was hard to prepare against, and it was easy for the victims to panic. With such a charge, most of them immediately fled. The scattered troops ran in all directions, leaving behind their armor and weapons. Night raid! Come with me! As the strongest among the Kingdom of God elites, Lena immediately reacted the moment she heard the screams. With a single punch, she blasted the wall of the caravan, and leaped out, leading her 4 divine envoys out. The moment she leaped out, she saw Yu Zhong with a cold look, aiming a RPG at the caravan. There were 10 other soldiers also hoisting RPGs on their shoulders. On top of that, 40 other soldiers with laser guns were aiming at them. A deadly sense of crisis arose in Lena's heart. Kill them! Yu Zhong's eyes flashed coldly as he pulled the trigger. With a flash, 10 rockets blasted towards the caravan. Hong! 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 With a loud explosion, the caravan was instantly blasted into pieces, while Lena and her 4 divine envoys were enveloped by the debris and dust. As the rockets exploded, multiple laser beams fired out, ensuring that everything within was blasted to death. Although Yu Zhong did not know Lena's identity, he was sure that the luxurious caravan was the residence of someone of importance. The first thing he did was to ensure that no one inside could survive. Get down! Just as he was about to leave, a chill came over his heart, and an incredible sense of danger rang in his mind. He roared and got down on the ground. His words had just rang out when 4 large wind blades swept out from the cloud of dust, slicing 4 of the soldiers, piercing through their Type 2 mutant beast hide, and slicing their bodies in half. Witnessing this, the rest of the soldiers immediately got down. It hurts! It hurts! Who is it? Who dares to attack me? I will kill him! I will slaughter him! From the dust, an enraged voice resounded out as a figure stepped out. His head had a pair of horns, his entire body was covered in black scales, his face etched with demonic runes, and a pair of demonic wings spread out from his back. His entire frame was covered with injuries, while his bloodshot eyes swiveled around. This demonic-like figure was Harriman. He was a strength, agility, spirit and vitality quadruple attribute evolver, and had the powerful second-order ability Demon Transformation. With this skill, he had always enhanced it, reaching its level 3 potential after spending much resources and his valuable skill points. With another 3 more skill points as well as the third-order skill book, he could immediately push it to the next realm. Activating this skill allowed Harriman to reach terrifying speeds, even faster than lightning. In a breath, he had reached the front lines, slashing out with his hands casually, and ripping the heads of 3 strength-based evolvers by Yu Zhong's side. These evolvers were level 43 and above, yet they could not even put up resistance. This was the true terror of the apostles in the kingdom of God. On the other side, a huge gust of wind blew out from the debris, as Lena stood up, her eyes flashing with murderous rage. The hurricane behind her blew forth towards Yu Zhong, as her hands waved and sent 2 wind blades out, instantly slaughtering 2 other soldiers wielding the laser guns. Yu Zhong's sudden attack had instantly decimated the 8 divine envoys before they could even do anything, leaving behind only Lena and Harriman. If it weren't for their terrifying strength, they would have also perished under the joint attacks of the RPGs and laser guns. Yu Zhong, is that you? Very good. Die for me! Harriman roared out as he crushed the heads of 2 soldiers, pulling their entire spine out, before laughing cruelly at Yu Zhong. He flapped his wings and charged right for Yu Zhong. Yu Zhong's gaze turned cold, as he activated his shadow steps and bone-encompassing armor. With a flip of his hands, the flaming blade made from the claw of the Type 4 flaming bird appeared in his hands. It was the sharpest weapon Yu Zhong had in his arsenal, even the level 5 weapons he had enhanced could not match it. The only weak point was that there's no way the weapon could absorb the experience gained from killing mutant beasts. As Harriman was about to reach Yu Zhong's pupils narrowed, and he activated his gravity manipulation, enveloping Harriman. Harriman's body sunk slightly, as though he wasn't affected at all, and he reached out with his claws towards Yuzhong's head. Gravity skills? Just 2 times. Weak. If you want to give me some problems, it has to be at least 10 times. Fool, you can die because of your foolishness. After transforming into a second-order demon, Harriman possessed terrifying strength. His claws could rip through the hull of a tank. As long as his claws connected, even White Bone's bone carapace would crumble. Harriman grabbed forcefully, and Yuzhong's head dissipated into nothing. Shadow clone. Harriman's heart jolted in shock and he retreated backwards. A sharp blade brushed past his chest, tearing a bloody wound. Had he been slightly slower, his entire upper body would have been sliced apart. He retreated some meters, when suddenly, dozens of laser beams fired at him. He flashed from his position, and the laser beams shot past his original location, creating holes in the ground. When he reappeared, there were a few more light wounds on his body, as well as a 25mm bullet hole in his right wing. Even his demonic body had no way of defending against laser beams. Great, great. Yuzhong, you're truly someone who has gotten close to the Apostle's strength. You even have such powerful subordinate. Seems like I need to exert more strength to kill you. Let me kill all your subordinates first, then I'll deal with you. Today will be the day you die. I will capture your women, and turn them all into bitches. Ha ha. Ha ha. Harriman's eyes turned red as he laughed out manically. With a single step, he managed to leap over dozens of meters. He reached out with his right hand and instantly tore the head, as well as the spine of a level 40 strength-based evolver. It was a horrifying sight. Chapter 668. Intense Battle with the Apostle. Chapter 668. Intense Battle with the Apostle. Harriman weaved in and out of the soldiers like a demon, clawing the brains out of the evolvers, as fresh blood splattered everywhere in a horrific manner. Strength-based evolvers were killed instantly by him, while agility-based evolvers could barely withstand his first blows with their blades before they were killed by the second. In just a short breath of time, 6 evolvers that had followed Yuzhong since Vietnam, and had killed many enemies of his, were instantly killed. Yuzhong pointed at Harriman and bellowed, "Yin Shuang! Kill him!" Yuzhong's strength was tyrannical, but his speed could not compare to a quadruple attribute evolver with a second-order demon transformation. If Harriman attacked him, he could still endure and take on the blows, but he had no way of preventing him from killing his subordinate. "Yes, father. Yin Shuang will go kill him now." Yin Shuang smiled brightly at Yuzhong, before shooting forward with the speed of sound, aiming for Harriman. In just a short breath, Yin Shuang had appeared in front of him, her eyes radiating with a cold and cruel killing intent. Her pale little fists exploded towards his brain. Harriman's preferred method of killing was to grab the head and pull out the entire spine of his victims, while Yin Shuang caused her opponents' heads to explode with her strength. Harriman looked at Yin Shuang with a hint of excitement as he grabbed out with his massive claws. "Ha ha! What an outstanding little girl! Good! Good! This trip to China was worth it. After I capture you, I will train you properly." Harriman's claws could tear apart even a tank. He would obviously not fear the fists of a little girl, even if she was an evolver. Yin Shuang's little fists brought about a terrifying whistle as it shot through the air and landed on Harriman's claws. With a loud blast, Harriman's entire right arm was blasted apart, along with his entire shoulder. Harriman himself was sent soaring through the air for about 70 and 80 meters as he spat out a mouthful of blood. As he got up, he spat out more blood and stared at Yin Shuang in shock. "How? My defense in this form is absolutely invulnerable. Even heavy-caliber bullets can do nothing to me. How could I have been injured by a little girl?" After transforming into a second-order demon, Harriman's strength was at least 5th amongst the apostles. Even the first-ranked apostle could not blast his arm apart with a single blow. Yin Shuang's feet dug into the ground after sending Harriman flying, then shooting right for him immediately, her little fists flying towards his head. Harriman no longer dared to face her, and flapped his demonic wings and flew into the sky. In his transformed state, he could fly for a short while. Yin Shuang continued to chase after him, leaping up into the sky with the speed of a cannonball, appearing in front of him, and her eyes flashed with a cold light as she brought her fists towards him again. Dark Do Chi! Harriman's eyes flashed in response as a dark energy surged out of him, covering his entire left arm, blocking in front of him. Yin Shuang's fist blasted the dark Do Chi that enveloped Harriman's left arm, and he was sent flying once more, spewing out blood. However, under the enhancement and protection of the dark Do Chi, Harriman's left shoulder was not destroyed by Yin Shuang's strength. "I'll kill you. Then Father will reward me. You can die." Yin Shuang continued to smile sweetly, yet evilly at the same time, as though she was a raptor eyeing her prey. Yin Shuang is truly formidable. Yu Zhong watched how Yin Shuang was dominating one of the powerful apostles, and his eyes flashed with a complicated gleam. He then turned around and discovered the other apostle, Lena, currently slaughtering his subordinate. Lena was an apostle that controlled the wind, and she was also a quadruple attribute evolver with stamina, spirit, agility, and vitality as her stats. She wore a set of equipment that was all based on the wind, and her combat strength was on another level. In the time that she lifted her hands, she could fire multiple wind blades of various sizes that sliced up the soldiers. When Yu Zhong was engaging Harriman, Lena had already killed 7 evolvers who were level 40 and above. "Go to hell!" Just as Lena was about to continue killing, Hua Ran bellowed, his entire body covered with his blood Do Chi, as he slashed towards her. Seeking death. Lena's eyes flashed with a cold light as she retreated slightly, pointing at Hua Ran and sending multiple invisible wind blades towards him. Although Hua Ran could not see the wind blades, his experience was abundant, and he could discern the directions they were flying from. He broke through the onslaught and charged towards Lena like an enraged lion. Lena continued to send out wind blades at him, and the sheer numbers managed to slice and injure Hua Ran in many places. As one of the apostles, her control over the wind blades was exceptional. Even Type 3 mutant beasts would have difficulty preventing her from slicing through their hide. Hua Ran's eyes flashed with a vicious light as he bore through the wind blades, charging right for Lena, and activated his ability Giant Cleave together with his blood Do Chi, slashing at Lena. As the Mongol king in the past, Hua Ran was also a peak-level evolver, and his combat experience was not lacking. While he might not reach the power of an apostle, he was not to be underestimated. Lena watched the incoming blade, her face finally showing an expression of shock. With a flash, a white shield materialized and blocked in front of her. Hua Ran's earth-shaking strike slammed into the white shield, and with a loud shatter, the white shield broke apart, not impeding the cleave of the blade in the slightest. However, the shield brought a sliver of time, enough for Lena to conjure a gust of wind, sending her body soaring up in the air. She flew above Hua Ran and made to claw at his head with her blades. As long as she activated her skill, countless wind blades would turn Hua Ran into meat paste. That was the difference between Hua Ran and an apostle. Just as she was about to activate her skill, her face fell and conjured her wind to bring her higher. At the next instant, a laser shot past her original location. Had she continued to use her ability to kill Hua Ran, she would be blasted into herself. Hua Ran heaved a sigh of relief and retreated a few steps, staring at Yu Zhong with a complicated gaze as he said, "Thank you." Yu Zhong had saved his life again. Had he not acted, Hua Ran would have been dismembered. Every single apostle had a lot of resources at their disposal and went through countless battles. Even Yu Zhong did not possess the confidence to win every single one of them. "Let's work together to kill her." Yu Zhong barked out as he aimed his laser gun again to fire at Lina. On the other side, the rest of the soldiers continued to fire their own laser guns, and many beams rained upon her. Lina's eyes flashed, and she pointed, causing a tornado to appear out of nowhere, blowing towards the rest of the soldiers. Under that intense gusts, most of the soldiers could not open their eyes. Yu Zhong fired the laser gun in his hands continually, but she dodged them easily. After evading 3 shots, she looked at Yu Zhong coldly and pointed, sending her signature wind blades at him. A moment of danger arose in his heart, and he activated his shadow steps, before he rolled to the ground and sought cover. Those dense wind blades tore into Yu Zhong's original location, causing many scars on the ground. Under Lina's skillful control, the blades seemed to have their own lives as they chased after Yu Zhong. Purring! Just as Yu Zhong was about to be sent fleeing by Lina, the clear sound of a gunshot sounded from afar, as a bullet made straight for Lina's head. The bright bullet that was enhanced blew through the countless wind protected and shot in between her eyebrows. Just as she was about to have her head explode, the treasure bronze necklace of protection flashed with a profound light, enveloping her. The bullet landed on that green shield and blasted apart the huge green shield. A gust of wind blew past, and the smoke was blown away, revealing Lina, whose hair had been split apart, her face bearing 2 new scars and her clothes in shambles. From afar, the number 1 sniper by he under Yu Zhong's forces eyed Lina coldly from atop a tree in the distance, leaping down as he moved towards another location. Chapter 669. Hitting the Apostles Hard. Chapter 669. Hitting the Apostles Hard. Lina managed to block that powerful shot, her beautiful eyes finally gleaming with a cold light. As an apostle, she was one of the toughest and strongest, but against Yu Zhong's elites, she actually felt a sense of threat to her own life. The fact that she could kill 8 high-level evolvers while under the joint attacks of Yu Zhong, Hua Ran and the rest of the 60 evolvers proved that she was strong with no doubt. If there was no Yu Zhong, Hua Ran or Bai He, Lina could definitely slaughter the rest of the 60 evolvers. After she blocked that terrifying sniper shot, with a flash of her body, she disappeared from her original location. A few laser beams shot past Lina's shadow. Other than Bai He, there were a few other top snipers amongst Yu Zhong's subordinate. It was just that they didn't possess the uncanny skills and abilities of Bai He. Compared to him, they were not as good, and because of that, they didn't manage to hit Lina. Yu Zhong watched Lina disappear, his eyes flashing with a vicious glint. He immediately channeled his dark Do Qi, and the dark layer of energy started to envelop his body, and he disappeared from his location as well. At the next instant, Yu Zhong had already leaped into the air, appearing beside Lina, and sending a powerful, oppressive fist right at her. Seeking death. Lina noticed that Yu Zhong had appeared and her eyes also flashed with a fierce glint. Her fair hands pointed at Yu Zhong, and multiple wind blades shot at him. Die for me. As numerous wind blades blasted Yu Zhong's body, it caused his bone carapace to be chipped away. Many black bone chips were shattered, however, under the protection of his twice-enhanced dark Do Qi. His defense was still pretty tough. It withstood the multitude of wind blades, and he charged right at her, sending a fierce fist at her face. As she was about to be blasted right in the face, Lina flipped her hands, and a white shield appeared again to block in front of her. "Break for me!" Yu Zhong yelled out in anger, and his right fist was enveloped by his powerful devil flame, slamming into the white shield. The terrifying second-order devil flame burst out, causing the white shield to shatter. At the moment of its destruction, Yu Zhong sent a sharp bone spike out from his fist right at Lina. As long as it penetrated her face, he could instantly kill this apostle from the kingdom of God. Lina had never expected Yu Zhong's attacks to be so insidious. Her face flashed with a trace of shock, and at this critical juncture, she burst forth with her terrifying strength as an apostle. With a thought, a gust of wind slapped into the bone spike, sending it off target. The spike was broken with that powerful gust of wind, and it brushed past her face, giving her skin a deep gash as fresh blood flowed. Lina relied on her strength and her experience to break away from Yu Zhong's strike when an even more dangerous premonition arose in her heart immediately after. She activated her control over the wind to dodge to another side. Purring! Following the loud and clear sound of a gunshot, a bullet that was enhanced shot over, blasting onto her left hand. If it were under any normal circumstances, she would have been able to dodge the bullet of snipers. However, right in front of her, Yu Zhong was an opponent she could not afford to underestimate. Her attention was wholly on him, and hence, her left hand had been taken out. Even then, she was truly an elite of the kingdom of God. At the first moment, she had flown even further into the sky, shooting a glare of hatred at Yu Zhong, before flying away into the distance. Yu Zhong landed from the sky as he watched Lina fly away with a glint in his eyes. What a pity! If only I could fly. As a Dark Knight, it was likely that further down the evolution line, he could possibly gain some flight-related abilities. However, as of now, it was rare for most others to gain flight. The few skills that could do so were wind-related. The moment Lina fled, Yu Zhong turned to face Harriman, who was being beaten by Yin Shuang, as he continued to spit blood and retreat. Harriman was truly an existence that even Hua Ran could not take on. However, Yin Shuang was a life form that was born out of the mutant-infected womb, and she used her strength and agility to suppress Harriman entirely. If it wasn't for his ability to fly, Yin Shuang would have pummeled him to death long ago. Harriman saw that Lina had fled, and his eyes flashed. He gritted his teeth and spat out a mouthful of his blood essence, as his wings shone with strange runes. As he flapped them, his entire person turned into a terrifying beam of black light that shot through the clouds and disappeared. The skill he used was a level 4 blood escape skill, which only those with demon blood or dark-related classes could use. When used, the person could immediately get away from the battlefield with insane speed. Likewise, the aftermath of the usage was horrendous, causing the user to only recover his or her optimal fighting strength after half a year. Shit! Yin Shuang watched Harriman escape, as she sighed in frustration. Although her power was beyond imagination, she could not fly, and could only watch as Harriman fled. Yin Shuang returned to Yu Zhong's side, her face slightly downcast as she spoke somewhat dispiritedly. Father, sorry, Yin Shuang did not manage to kill the bad guy. Yu Zhong reached out to ruffle her head and chuckled. It's all right. Yin Shuang has done well. Yin Shuang immediately broke into a bright smile. Hee. Father has praised me. Under this strange education by Yu Zhong, Yin Shuang had become even more fearsome, to the point of not blinking when she took lives. Bai Xiao Xing came up to Yu Zhong, his face contorted in grief. Leader, we lost 23 brothers. Harriman and Lina were simply too ferocious. Under the crazy assault, they were still able to kill 23 of Yu Zhong's evolvers. Many of them were old comrades that had followed Yu Zhong for a long time, through Japan, Country A, Guangxi, the Central Plains, and they were sadly killed by Harriman and Lina. Yu Zhong was filled with rage as he gritted his teeth. They will not die in vain. I will make those bastards pay the price of blood. The moment the two apostles fled, the rest of the outer Mongolia crumbled, and the soldiers fled in different directions, while many others surrendered. They weren't fighters in the first place, and after the apocalypse, they were even more untouched and had not really experienced any battles. With Yu Zhong's night raid, they had killed over 6,000 soldiers, with 3,000 that escaped, and another 20,000 that surrendered. They had 30,000 assault rifles, a dozen tanks, 100 over machine gun-mounted vehicles, and some tens of assault helicopters. All these fell right into Yu Zhong's hands, together with their resources and flock. Regardless of how advanced the weaponry was, the users were still humans. If the 30,000 Mongolian soldiers were like the elites of Kingdom of God, they would have given Yu Zhong some trouble. Damn it! Damn Yu Zhong, you actually injured me to this extent! I will not let you off! Within a forest of the Central Plains, Harriman's face was pale as he cursed out. By now, he had dissolved the demon transformation, and he looked extremely weak. Lena looked at her disembodied left hand, bearing the pain as she cursed. He has already defeated the troops and gained all their equipment. In this region, no power could possibly stand up to him. What other means can we use? Harriman could not help but burst out in unhappiness. Those outer Mongolians were a bunch of trash. 30,000 and they were actually defeated so easily. Fools! Useless! What were the elders thinking, using those clowns? To even give them the resources from Russia as well. Now they are all in Yu Zhong's hands, it's going to be tougher. No one could have expected the outer Mongolians to crumble so easily. Even Yu Zhong, who had launched the night raid, did not think he could have won so easily. After the night battle, with the resources in hands, Yu Zhong was truly like a tiger that grew wings. Since he had expended a lot of resources in the battle with the zombies, he had suddenly gained a refill. Since the Kingdom of God controlled a large part of the earth, their resources were truly magnificent. In order to defeat Yu Zhong, they had deployed a lot of resources and weapons. Now they had ended up in his hands, and he could arm 3 regiments with them. Lena's face was sullen as she replied slowly, "There are many experts by his side. It would be hard for the 2 of us to deal with him. We definitely need to activate at least 12 divine envoys and 36 backup envoys. Maybe an additional adjudicator troop as well." Chapter 670, Erect. Chapter 670, Erect. Lena, Harriman were 2 of the strongest amongst the Kingdom of God elites, and few could measure up to them amongst Yu Zhong's people, other than Yin Shuang. However, this time, they had suffered such a loss because the 8 divine envoys had died before they could even exhibit anything. The original number of judges by their side did not number more than 50, and before they had even reacted, they had been assassinated one by Tempi Osaka. Because of this, Lena and Harriman were ambushed by Yu Zhong's forces. Harriman thought of Yin Shuang and his eyes flashed with trepidation. What was that little girl by his side? How is she so terrifying? Even after my demon transformation, I could not even compare with her. Whenever Harriman shifted to his second-order demon form, he was extremely tough. Even heavy-caliber bullets could not pierce him. Grenades would just cause him to be scratched slightly. Yet, his resilient body could not even withstand a single hit from Yin Shuang, and he could not help but feel some fear towards her. Lena replied softly, "There was nothing in the intelligence report. At first, it seemed like she was one of his favorites that he kept around him. Seems like it is more than that. If she isn't a powerful evolver, she's likely an intelligent biological life form from the apocalypse." Harriman's eyes flashed with shock. Highly intelligent being? Like that strange thing in South America? She's actually something like that? Since the Kingdom of God was active all around the world, they knew many things. Lena's reply was solemn. "That's right. 3 of our units had been wiped out by such a being over at South America. It seems that everything had collapsed over there, and there's no human resistance any longer. It's a playground for the zombies." South America was originally an important location to the Kingdom of God, and yet, it had actually become a zombie land. Hearing this, Harriman frowned. As one of the apostles, he had always gained his intelligence easily. Therefore, he would rather focus on drugs and women. In the end, he was only aware of little things that were going on. He knew that there were biological entities similar to Yin Shuang over at South America, but did not know that the forces of the Kingdom of God over there had already fallen. With the flow of time, zombies and mutant beasts would evolve constantly. The Kingdom of God had made use of their intelligence and people to expand quickly. However, they discovered that their enemies grew, and were stronger as well. Some of them were the local hegemons, like Yuzhong or Huaran. However, some were zombies and mutant beasts. Even a horde of over millions in numbers would give the kingdom of God a headache. Many of their troops had been run over by the terrifying zombies. Harriman looked up at the sky. Regardless, we have to head back first. I would need to spend at least a month in the recovery pod. There were the sounds of helicopter motors roaring as a Thunder fighter arrived at their location. Both of them had GPS capabilities in their suits. As long as they did not lose them, they could receive reinforcements easily. Harriman and Lena had not gone long, but the results of their battle had traveled to the headquarters in Europe. This news caused a tremor amongst the upper echelons of the Kingdom of God. After all, in order to ensure success, they had not sent any troops directly, but they had still provided a hefty amount of resources and equipment on the Outer Mongolians. After losing their weapons, their military might suffer by about 70% over at Outer Mongolia and Russia. Furthermore, there was no other chess piece they could utilize against Yuzhong anymore. Those damn Outer Mongolians, what a bunch of fools! We've given them so much help, yet they lost so badly. What trash! They're worse than the Vietnamese. Why did we work together with them in the first place? We must have been blind. With their defeat, our power in the East has already suffered. How can we prevent that tyrant Yuzhong from expanding? I feel we should deploy our elite troops in India, and send at least 5 army corps over to the Central Plains. There's already such enmity between us, it is the best chance to eradicate him. No way. We're still consolidating our power at India. Furthermore, it's a haven of resources there. If we were to deploy so many of our troops, the local powers will rebel. Then do we just let Yuzhong do as he wants? Based on the satellites, he had already conquered Ba Yan City and Bao Shi City in Mongol. If he continues like this, his power would only grow. He already has a quarter of the entire China in his hands. Sooner or later, he would become the only power of the entire China. It won't good news to us by then. Yuzhong's power has already consolidated. I feel we shouldn't invest any more troops over there. If it's too little, there's no way to fight. Too many, and our other locations will suffer. We need to focus our strength and eradicate the zombies over at Germany. We haven't fully dealt with the situation over there. Germany had about 80 million zombies, and such a number was basically a nightmare to any power. The Kingdom of God had established plenty of bases everywhere, however, they only managed to conquer a few industrial cities locally. It was not that they didn't prioritize their local area, but that the Kingdom of God was originally a worldwide conglomerate. Due to that, after the apocalypse, they had swiftly utilized their different divisions to obtain resources and build up their bases. Since then, while they had responded and expanded the fastest, their power was still too widely spread out, and their strength was being chipped away little by little. In truth, many of the elders hoped that they could tighten their circle and redeploy some key personnel to deal with the 70 million zombies in Germany, having lowered the number from 80 million. However, by transferring personnel, not only did it require the necessary equipment and fuel, the various bases would also be affected. Some locations might even be wiped out the moment their people were transferred out. This caused the head of the Kingdom of God to be in a dilemma. Every location could provide a huge amount of resources and people to the main base. That was how the entire faction had grown so powerfully in their research and grooming of their apostles. If Yuzhong had not meddled, the laser gun design would have landed in the hands of the Kingdom of God. With their technology, they would have developed the laser guns much faster and armed their troops, propelling the might of their soldiers. If the Kingdom of God lost their bases outside of the country, after Harriman and Lena were injured, they would not have gotten their support. Thus, every single base was important to the Kingdom of God. No, I think it should be possible to bargain with him. benefits of trade between countries, since he already has the qualifications to negotiate with us. The Outer Mongolia and Russia have no way of recovering from this defeat. We need to allocate the resources back to our main base. Erek roared out with fury, "No! We must wipe him out. We have to kill this bastard. I recommend sending 4 apostles as well as 2 judges' corps to deal with him. It would definitely be enough to eradicate him. He's too dangerous, we cannot let this guy continue to live any longer." Erek was a staunch supporter of a single power. He wasn't willing for another hegemon to appear in the East. It would not be beneficial to their kingdom of God. After the apocalypse, the current period was where the humans fought to evolve. Erek believed that humanity would win the zombies and mutant beasts with their intelligence and strength. After that, they would then regain their cities and seas. By that time, it would be a struggle between humankind, and he did not wish for another contender to rise. The elder Jonas listened to everybody, thinking long and hard before replying. "Erek, you shall head to China and work with the Greater China Alliance, and eradicate Yuzhong." 10th Apostle Wade, 11th Apostle Wilson, 12 Divine Envoys, 36 Divine Envoys in waiting, a battalion of judges and 3 battalions of adjudicators will follow you to China. I want Yuzhong dead. Erek replied in delight, "Yes, Great Elder, I will definitely kill Yuzhong." 2 Apostles, 12 Divine Envoys, 36 Divine Envoys in waiting, a battalion of judges and 3 battalions of adjudicators was a force that could decimate an entire country. Erek thought of the command of this elite troop under him, and he trembled with excitement. Jonas stared at Erek and spoke coldly, "For months, if you can't take him out in 4 months, you can kill yourself." Erek's face turned pale, before he regained the ferocity in his eyes. "Yes, Great Elder." Chapter 671, Een Shan Mountain Range. Chapter 671, Een Shan Mountain Range. After eradicating the troops of Outer Mongolia, Yuzhong had gained a huge amount of resources. He made use of them to launch an assault in the direction of Huhe City. The big-head mutant zombie did not continue to harass Yuzhong. Instead, it summoned the zombies from Huhe City and made their way further northeast. After collecting the 3 million zombies from Huhe City, the entire horde swelled to a size of over 4 million again. Yuzhong watched the horde advance towards the northeast, and although he was extremely worried in his heart, there was nothing he could do to impede them. Yuzhong had somewhat guessed that the commander behind this horde wanted to amass as many zombies as it could, before seeking him again. If the numbers were to exceed 10 million, then it would truly be a nightmare for humanity. This was what Yuzhong was most afraid of. There were over 10 billion zombies in China. If they were to gather, just 1 billion of them could overrun Yuzhong and his bases. The zombies continued north, allowing Yuzhong to swiftly recover the cities and rescue the emaciated survivors from various corners. Many survivors were assigned to work in the different factories. As the numbers of survivors swelled, other than the military factories, the rest of the steel, coal and clothing factories began to operate again. The entire Central Plains soon regained some semblance of society, as well as prosperity. The Een Shan mountain range seemed endless, and after the apocalypse, countless mutant plants had overrun the entire place, while mutant beasts had herded together. It was not a place that humans could survive in. One particular bespectacled male, who was haggard and only dressed in a simple turf-woven fabric, his skin tanned, was currently searching for food carefully on the ground. His name was Lei Yun. He was a botanical expert before the apocalypse, and when the apocalypse happened, he had followed a number of survivors as they fled into the mountain range. At the start, the city was filled with zombies and mutant beasts. It was easier to survive in the Een Shan mountain range then. However, the mountain range started to evolve as well, with countless plants transforming into man-eating plants. What was once edible disappeared, and animals also started to mutate and hunt the humans. What was the scariest was that some people gathered together to lord over the rest. The lives of the ordinary people became extremely tough. Lei Yun was one of the survivors that escaped from the cruel factions within the mountain range. His eyes suddenly brightened as he crawled on the floor and dug the ground with his callus-filled hands, obtaining a stalk of edible wild grass. After digging out that wild grass, Lei Yun continued to look around for food. Although there was plenty of vegetation that can be seen on the Yinshan mountain range, most of them were inedible. Lei Yun saw some people bursting apart, with vines growing out from within. On top of that, there were some who even spat out blood before turning into corpses. Lei Yun was also relying on his prior knowledge of botany to find some wild grass that could be eaten. As to those he didn't recognize, he didn't dare consume. As he bent down, there was the sound of rustling in the tall grass nearby. He went rigid, only to discover 5 militants dressed in gray clothes, with blades and shields on their backs appearing in front of him. "There's somebody. Not bad. Looks like our group is pretty lucky." One of the men had scars on his face, and as he laughed, his expression looked savage. Lei Yun's face flashed with despair, and he threw the wild grass in his hand, turning around to run. In the Yinshan mountain range, the humans were scarier than mutant beasts. They would capture ordinary people to be slaves after they were utilized. They would consume these slaves like wild beasts. There were mutant beasts and wild vegetables that were not existences normal humans could deal with. At the same time, edible vegetation was rare. In comparison, humans were the weakest link and also a form of food. The man with scars was instantly enraged and he charged right after Lei Yun. "Damn it, you dare run after seeing this senior? Are you tired of living?" Lei Yun had starved constantly, and his body was malnourished. There was no way he could handle the man with scars. In just a few steps, he was grabbed by the man, who pushed him down onto the ground. Lei Yun immediately yelped in terror, "Don't kill me! Don't kill me! I know which wild vegetation can be eaten. Please spare my life. I can help you look for food." The leader, who was a burly man with deep-set eyes, spoke solemnly, "Tiger, don't use too much force. If you kill him accidentally, we won't even get our merit point." Tiger immediately let Lei Yun go, but not before staring at him. "Got it? Kid, don't run. We don't even want your wild vegetables. If you dare run again, even if this senior was to be reprimanded by the higher-ups, I will still hack you." The man with deep-set eyes asked Lei Yun coldly, "Kid, what's your name?" Lei Yun trembled a little as he looked at them and replied carefully, "I'm called Lei Yun. I was a botanist before the apocalypse. I can recognize many mutant plants, and find at least 5 types of edible plant." Su Wei pulled out a chocolate bar from his clothes and handed it to Lei Yun. "I'm Su Wei, the captain of the Scum Battalion, 3rd Battalion, 2nd Company, 3rd Platoon, 1st Squad. We're here on orders to look for survivors in the mountain range. Lei Yun, do you know if there are any other survivors out here?" Tiger's face turned black. "Captain, can we not report our full names? The title of the Scum Battalion is too humiliating." The rest of the armed men chuckled bitterly. Su Wei's face was indifferent. "It's a fact. Those who are in the Scum Battalion, which of us are not scum? If you want to get rid of such a label, other than working hard to gain merit, there's no other way." Lei Yun received the chocolate bar with care, his eyes turning moist. These chocolate bars were something he would not even eat before the apocalypse. Now, any single one could get him a night with a woman. Lei Yun suppressed the urge to swallow the entire thing together with the wrapping as he assessed the 5 men in front of him. "I know the situation of a faction that's about a 100 li from here." Lei Yun pointed to a small hill, saying, "Atop that hill, there's a faction calling themselves the Tiger Head Clan. There's a leader, 5 fighters, and 13 women. The leader is called Nangong Tianfeng, and his weapon is a thick blade. The 5 fighters all use wooden bats." Inside the Yinshan mountain range, It was already something for these small factions to possess a melee weapon. After all, they had mostly brought along worthless currency at the time of their escape. Hearing this, one of the soldiers became excited. "Captain, 19 survivors, this time we can gain 95 merit points. Adding to our past efforts, if we save a few more, we can finally gain freedom from the scum battalion. Let's go all out." Searching for survivors in the mountain range was a dangerous job. The task was delegated to these scums. For every survivor found, the party would earn 5 merit points, equivalent to killing 5 zombies. Ordinary scums would need 40 merit points to regain their freedom as citizens. Thus, these soldiers were extremely excited. Yuzhong wasn't worried that these soldiers would run. After all, in the Yinshan mountain range, danger was everywhere. If they tried to flee, with their ordinary strength, they would just become meals for the mutant beasts or nutrients for the mutant plants. Although the training was tough for the scum battalion, they still suffered casualties on missions like this. In certain situations, they even had to become cannon fodder. Those who went against orders would be directly executed. They could eat their fill, and from time to time there was meat. At the same time, when cleaning up zombies in cities, they would scavenge for resources and get to keep some for themselves. Compared to the wild, it was a lot better than in the scum battalion. At the same time, if any of those who fled from the scum battalion were caught, they were instantly executed or sent to become research subjects. These people were thus afraid of Yuzhong. Su Wei frowned and asked, "Are there any enhancers up there?" Lei Yun eyed the weapons on their backs with envy. "No. Nangong Tianfeng used to be some small-time hoodlum and learned some martial arts. He shouldn't be an issue for you guys." A ferocious glint appeared in Su Wei's eyes. "Good. Brothers. Let's go." The Tiger Head clan turned out to be some mountain cave, and there was only one man who was wielding a wooden bat, patrolling outside with obvious boredom, from time to time, looking into the cave. Inside the cave, there were the sounds of moaning. "Do it." Su Wei came up carefully and shot towards the man with the wooden bat. When the man saw Su Wei with his huge blade, he immediately turned pale and kneeled. "Spare me, Lord! Spare me, Lord! I surrender!" That easy. The rest of the men were speechless upon seeing this scene. Chapter 672. Tiger Wolf Army. Chapter 672. Tiger Wolf Army. Su Wei barked coldly and charged into the cave. Continue. 3 of the soldiers followed Su Wei and charged into the cave. They discovered 4 naked men tangled with 11 women, while 2 other younger girls were crouching at a corner. There was a stench in the cave. One of the males immediately stood up upon seeing Su Wei and his men, grabbing the blade beside him as he stared at them. "Who are you people?" Su Wei looked at Nangong Tianfeng coldly. "You're Nangong Tianfeng?" "I'm Su Wei from the Scum Battalion, the 3rd Battalion, 2nd Company, 3rd Platoon under the command of Leader Yuzhong. We've been tasked to search for survivors in this mountain range. It's not too late if you surrender now, otherwise only death awaits." Nangong Tianfeng looked at the strong and burly men, and let out a long sigh. He threw the blade in his hands away. "I surrender." Tiger looked at all the naked women as a lustful look appeared on his face. "Captain, I've not touched a woman in a month. There are over 10 here. Shall we take our time to enjoy them?" The rest of the squad also stared stupidly at the women. They were all criminals of some sorts, that was why they were banished to the Scum Battalion. Not a single one of them did not enjoy women. Being cooped up in the Scum Battalion for so long, they were close to losing control. Su Wei laughed coldly. "If you want to toy with them, by all means. Let me remind you though, playing around with a woman while on mission, you'll have to kill another 60 zombies, or gain 60 merit points. These 11 are free for you guys to fuck around with, but if you touch those 2 girls, I will kill you. I'd rather not have you guys drag me down. I still want to enter the Tiger Wolf Army." Hearing Su Wei's words, the rest of the squad immediately sobered up. It wasn't easy to earn those merit points. 60 points were enough for them to get out of the scum battalion, and with some excess cash to boot. 10 merit points were enough to exchange for $50 of the new currency. Outside, $50 was enough to get a woman for a night. $50 could get them a fresh and clean woman who was considerably prettier than the women in front of them. They would be able to enjoy themselves for an entire night without worrying about anything else. The women in the cave were dirty and smelly and had traces of whatever the other men left on them. The squad immediately felt that it wasn't worth it. As for the two Lolas, there was an order in the scum battalion: should there be any case of rape of underage children, the perpetrator would be caught and executed. The entire unit would be equally liable as well. The Tiger Wolf Army was a unit newly set up by Yu Zhong, with plenty of enhancers that managed to leave the scum battalion. They had all undergone tough training and killed many zombies. Their resolves and mental fortitude were on another level. At the same time, they were conditioned to listen to orders, and they were the best soldiers. Many of those who earned enough merits and felt that they could not re-enter society would aim to enter the Tiger Wolf Army. As a member of such an elite unit, they would regain their pride, position, and strength. Bai Shaoxing was the current commander of the Tiger Wolf Army, leading them to use system equipment to continuously enhance and evolve themselves. It was a unit that was made up entirely of enhancers, and every single soldier inside was a tough elite. Tiger considered the matter from all perspectives and felt that giving in to his lust wasn't worth it, and a look of pity flashed in his eyes. "Forget it." Nangong Tianfeng looked at them and spoke carefully. "Sirs, you're here to search for survivors, right? I am familiar with the area, I know where there are survivors." Su Wei and the rest were all strong and well-equipped, their faces ruddy. It was easy to see that they were well-fed. Nangong Tianfeng might claim to be a leader of this cave. He had to starve frequently. Not to mention his subordinates, most of them were barely skin and bones. That was why the moment Su Wei and the rest appeared, they instantly surrendered. They were simply not in a position to resist. Su Wei's brows arched slightly, as he threw a chocolate bar to Nangong Tianfeng. "Oh, that's great, this is your reward." Nangong Tianfeng's eyes flashed with delight the moment he received the chocolate bar, and nodded profusely to express his thanks. "Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir." The rest of the survivors within that cave looked on with envy and hope. They had not eaten anything sweet in a long while. This simple chocolate bar was even more appealing than lobsters and luxury food. Nangong Tianfeng walked out the cave and pointed to a direction. "Sir, after you cross this hill, in about 1 kilometer, there's a camp with over 300 survivors. Their leader is a pretty strong evolver." Nangong Tianfeng looked towards Su Wei after he finished. Evolvers were a terrifying existence, and they had incredible abilities. Even special forces from before the apocalypse weren't a match for them. To him, this squad of 5 were not a match for that evolver. When Su Wei heard those words, he frowned. "Evolver? Seems like this is beyond us. I need to notify the Tiger Wolf Army and request for reinforcements." Su Wei pulled out a walkie-talkie and reported, "Hey! It's me, Su Wei. My squad has discovered a large survivor base. There should be about 300 people inside, and there's an evolver. Requesting backup from the Tiger Wolf Army." 300. Damn. Well done. Su Wei, you guys have contributed greatly. Stay where you are, I'll immediately get the guys from the Tiger Wolf Army to head over. From the other end, an excited voice sounded. Soon, a unit of about 50 people with helmets, camouflage uniforms, and assault rifles arrived in front of Su Wei and the rest. "Strong. This unit is strong. They have so many guns." Nangong Tianfeng looked at the 50 soldiers and his eyes flashed with shock. Within the mountain range, as long as someone had weapons, they could establish a small force. 50 gun-toting militants were enough to eradicate and crush many other factions within the mountain range. The leader of this unit, Lu Niu, slapped Su Wei on his shoulders and exclaimed, "Well done, Su Wei. As long as we can rescue those 300 survivors, you'll definitely be able to enter the Tiger Wolf army." Su Wei's eyes flashed with a resolute light as he responded, "Yes. This battle, your subordinate Su Wei hopes to follow Commander in, and pleads Commander to grant this request." Lu Niu eyed Su Wei and chuckled, "Fine. Follow us then, we'll show you the strength of the Tiger Wolf army." Led by Nangong Tianfeng and Lei Yun, Lu Niu brought his 50 subordinates and arrived silently on the opposite hill. They discovered that the peak was surrounded by a wooden fence, with 4 sentry posts, with 2 soldiers at each post. There were also 8 soldiers at the main entrance, and within the camp, there were many simple wooden houses. Lu Niu brought 8 soldiers and walked out from the grass, firing his gun at the sky as he hollered, "The people inside, listen up! Throw down your weapons and kneel to surrender, otherwise everyone will die." The moment the gunshots rang out, the soldiers turned pale and ran into the camp. "A bunch of fools! Open fire!" Lu Niu's eyes flashed with unhappiness as he raised their weapons and fired at the fleeing soldiers. Following the dense gunfire of the 8 fleeing soldiers, 6 fell to the ground, while the remaining 2 got down on the ground and trembled uncontrollably. The intense gunfire alerted the leader within the camp, and a skinny evolver, Shin Tu-yi, led 30 subordinates and rushed out the camp. Shin Tu looked at Lu Niu and his party, his face full of shock and anger. "This brother, I'm Shin Tu-yi, the chief of this Tianyang camp. We have no enmity between us. Why did you kill my men?" Lu Niu stared at Shin Tu-yi, barking, "I'm Lu Niu, the commander of the Tiger Wolf Army 2nd Battalion 3rd Company, 1st Platoon. We're under the command of Leader Yu Zhong, here to extract your people. Shin Tu-yi, you can surrender now and we can let you live, or choose to resist and die. You only have 3 seconds to consider." 3, 2. A ferocious glint appeared in Shin Tu-yi's eyes as he roared, "Brothers, prepare for battle." Shin Tu-yi was happy with his life as the ruler of his small camp and wasn't willing to submit to anyone else, nor give up his authority. Peng! Right after Shin Tu-yi had shouted, 4 sniper bullets fired out. One pierced the head of Shin Tu-yi. Although he was a strength-based evolver, he could not withstand a single shot from a sniper. "Those who resist will die. Everyone get down. Otherwise we'll kill without mercy," Lu Niu roared out as he pointed his gun at the subordinates of Shin Tu-yi. Another 10 fully armed soldiers walked out from the forest behind, their guns trained on the men of Shin Tu-yi. The men from the camp were all afraid, as they threw their guns down and kneeled to surrender. The entire camp was thus easily conquered by the Tiger Wolf army. Powerful! Nangong Tianfeng watched how Lu Niu easily smashed the resistance of Shin Tu-yi, and he was filled with even more fear and awe towards them, even more so, the mysterious leader Yu Zhong behind them. After they took down this camp, with Nangong Tianfeng's help, the Tiger Wolf army continued to bash a few more camps around the area and rescued a total of 2,000 survivors. Chapter 673. 8-Leaf Blue Plant. Chapter 673. 8-Leaf Blue Plant. There were numerous survivors in tattered clothes scattered throughout the Yinshan mountain range. Currently, the riders of the 2nd Brigade, the new 4th Brigade of the Tiger Wolf Army, as well as the soldiers of the Scum Battalion 3rd Battalion, were all keeping their eyes on the survivors. Many of the factions, regardless of size, were easily breached by the soldiers of the Tiger Wolf Army, and the leaders either submitted or were killed instantly. The frail and weak survivors were all squatting on the ground, carefully sipping their hot porridge. There was a look of satisfaction on their face. The hundreds of soldiers from the Scum Battalion were holding whips as they eyed the survivors. The moment any of them tried to snatch the food of any others, they would face the wrath of the soldiers, suffering a number of whips before being to the back-end support of the scum battalion. Within the mountain range, many small factions had appeared due to the small-time tyrants, and countless depraved deeds had been carried out. For those who had engaged in crimes too heinous, they were instantly decapitated. Those who committed severe crimes were sent to the scum battalion to be reformed and trained before becoming soldiers. A Hummer rolled over from the distance, entering the mountain range. The moment the doors appeared, Yu Zhong, Yin Shuang, Ji Qingwu and a few others came out. Lai Ming-yi came forward to salute them. Leader! Leader! One by one, the rest of the commanders also came behind Lai Ming-yi and saluted Yu Zhong. Yu Zhong waved his hands and dismissed them. Go do your things, don't bother about me. Yes. Most of these commanders were all soldiers that were deployed over from Guangxi and Hunan and knew Yu Zhong's character. They left one by one, with only Lai Ming-yi remaining behind. Under Lai Ming-yi's lead, Yu Zhong came to Lei Yun and asked, "The report about a missile base in this mountain range, is it true?" A missile base was a top secret in the country, and it was the first time Yu Zhong had heard about something like this. If he could gain control over this base, he would gain a terrifying trump card against his enemies. Lei Yun looked at Yu Zhong with a little fear. It's true. I stayed near the base for a period of time once. At the start of the apocalypse, I came across the base together with a few officials. However, the base only allowed the officials in, not us ordinary people. I've remembered the location though. In Lei Yun's eyes, this is the leader of the mighty troops. He was extremely clear on the frightening might these people possessed, and anyone who was suspicious was dragged out to be executed. They didn't look like some motley bunch, and he wasn't willing to antagonize the leader of these powerful soldiers. Yu Zhong was satisfied. Good. You're Lei Yun right. As long as the information is real, I will award you with $1,000. Lai Ming-yi smiled at Lei Yun, saying, $1,000 can buy you a 1,000 jin worth of rice. You're truly lucky. Lei Yun immediately expressed his thanks profusely. Thank you, leader. Thank you, leader. Those who did not starve would not truly understand the value of 1,000 jin of rice. With it, Lei Yun could eat his fill for an entire year. Lei Yun spoke. Leader, I have an additional piece of information. Yu Zhong's eyes were filled with curiosity. Oh? What is it? Lei Yun pulled out a few items, a piece of debris that was the size of 2 fingers as well as a blue plant that had sprouted 8 leaves, handing them to Yu Zhong. Leader, this is a mutant plant that I discovered. The flowers can secrete a strange liquid that is incredibly hard after drying. Based on my conjecture, the hardness of the dried-up liquid is even harder than metal, and can be applied over armor. Yu Zhong took the items and used his strength to pinch. His strength of 12 times a normal person exploded out, which could twist even a steel bar, but the hardened debris was fine. His eyes brightened, and he threw the item on the ground, pulling out his level 5 crocodile tooth saw blade and slashed the debris. The blade landed, but the debris was still undamaged. Yu Zhong picked it up again, and to his surprise, his blade that could slash apart the hull of armored vehicles could not even leave a mark on the debris. It was obvious that the hardness of this liquid was many times tougher than metal. Yu Zhong turned to fix his gaze on Lei Yun. Do you know if there are more of this mutant plant? Lei Yun pulled out 5 blue seeds. I know. I even collected a few seeds. Before the apocalypse, I was a botanist. Yu Zhong looked at Lei Yun and his eyes flashed with a look of appreciation. Good. Lei Yun, I now appoint you the head researcher over the Central Plains Mutant Research Institute. Your responsibility is to conduct research on the various mutant plants of Yinshan Mountain Range. Your rank is captain, and your first task is to collect more of this 8-leaf blue plant. Lei Yun thanked Yu Zhong excitedly. Yes. Thank you, leader. Thank you, leader. Lei Yun knew that once he entered Yu Zhong's group of personnel and become an officer, as long as Yu Zhong did not fall, he would not have to worry about his future. Yu Zhong turned solemn. Lai Ming-yi, send an experienced soldier to protect Lei Yun. The matter of this 8-leaf blue plant is top secret, do not let anyone else know about it. The secretion of this plant could harden to become a material even tougher than metal, yet so much lighter than it. It had a wide variety of usage, it could be made into defense vests, airplanes, tanks, and much more. If it had landed in the hands of any faction before the apocalypse, it would have become a precious resource. If it were in the hands of any ordinary person, it would be useless, but in Yu Zhong's hands, with his many facilities, it could be exploited fully, just like that laser gun and the Sky Fortress design. Lai Ming-yi immediately replied, "Yes, leader." Yu Zhong then replied, "Before that, Lei Yun, take us to the missile base." "Yes," Lei Yun replied respectfully. Under Lei Yun's guidance, Yu Zhong deployed a battalion of Tiger Wolf Army soldiers and headed up. "It's right there." From afar, Lei Yun pointed towards a tall mountain. Yu Zhong looked towards the direction, noticing a long road extending all the way up the mountain. It was obvious that this road was the only road to the missile base. Yu Zhong and his troops followed the road all the way, eradicating about 20,000 soldiers, and came to a large iron door. Outside the door, there were 4 security cameras sweeping across his party. Yu Zhong came to the gate and his voice rang out, "My name is Yu Zhong, I hope to talk to your leader." Behind this door was one of China's missile base, and there were all sorts of missiles and rockets inside. Although Yu Zhong had the confidence to blow down the door, he didn't want to take the risk. Right now, within the compound, inside the command center, 20 men in uniform were arguing. One of the officers looked at the display, his face scowling. This bunch of militants actually dare to set their sights on the country's property, what galls! To many of these old-timers, they weren't willing to let the weapons of the country fall into the hands of private individuals. Yu Zhong and his people were obviously not here in any official capacity. Hearing the words of the officer, the rest of the military men exchanged glances, before a young officer spoke up, "Colonel, I think that we should talk to them." The colonel turned and rebuked, "Nangong Yen, what are you thinking of? What is there to discuss with these bastards? Don't tell me that you want to betray our country and our citizens?" Nangong Yen stared right back at him and retorted, "Colonel, it has already been a year since we last heard from the central government. What does this mean? The central government has already most likely fallen. If we continue like this, we will only starve here. We should go out and interact with them and find out who they are. If they're reliable, I feel that we should the base over." The colonel was utterly enraged by Nangong Yan's words, and he pulled out the gun at his waist, his body trembling as he roared, "You! I will execute you, traitor!" Nangong Yen closed his eyes and said softly, "By all means, Colonel. Holding ourselves up here is no solution. There's no entertainment nor hope. I'm going insane. If you want to kill me, do it, please. I hope that you can retain some consideration for the rest of the people." After the world changed, many people had holed up within this missile base. Many could not take the life anymore and they committed suicide. Even within the military, many killed them. The rest who remained were slowly losing their rationality. The colonel looked at Nangong Yen and the rest. "What are you doing? You want to surrender to those people?" "I want to live on. I want to eat my fill. I want to see the sunlight." After a moment's hesitation, most of the military men stood up one by one. Chapter 674. Obtaining the Nuclear Bombs. Chapter 674. Obtaining the Nuclear Bombs. The colonel looked at his subordinates with a flash of hurt in his eyes. He sighed, and turned the gun to his own temple, closing his eyes and pulling the trigger. Pung! Following the gunshot, the colonel slumped to the ground slowly. He wasn't willing to betray his own principles and hand this base to Yu Zhong. However, he could not bring himself to kill his subordinate. Furthermore, he had already lost his loved ones to the zombies. There was nothing holding him back. Thus, he committed suicide. Colonel! Colonel! Seeing that the colonel had committed suicide, the soldiers under him could not help but shed tears. This superior of theirs had treated them well and fairly through the years, and they were upset that he had chosen to die. Colonel, we're sorry. Nangong Yang came up to the body and saluted, before going to the monitors and spoke into the mic. I'm the one in charge of this nuclear base, Nangong Yen. Who are you people? Yu Zhong replied, I'm the leader of the Central Plains, with over 1 million people under me. I hope to receive this nuclear base peacefully. As long as you hand the base to me, whatever requests you may have, I can grant them if they're not too overboard. When negotiating, both sides had to display their might. Without it, who would be willing to yield? With 1 million survivors under him, he had the qualifications to persuade the soldiers to submit to him. After being silent for a while, Nangong Yen asked, What's the situation with the central government? Yu Zhong replied, The capital had already fallen, and it is a land of zombies now. If the capital hadn't collapsed, and the government had not crumbled, the situation wouldn't have been so bad. In fact, in the first half of the year during the apocalypse, many places were still waiting resolutely for the orders from the government. However, with the flow of time, since there was no communication, the various leaders started to get their own ideas. Even after a year, there were still many loyal old guards who were still believing in the government, unwilling to hand the state's resources to private mercenaries like Yu Zhong. Nangong Yen contemplated for a moment before replying, I need you to promise our safety. Furthermore, I hope you'll allow all of us here to remain as a troop. If within a year, we find that it's hard to integrate with your troops, we hope that you'll allow us to leave with a certain amount of rations then. Yu Zhong thought for a while, I promise you. However, I need you to teach my troops how to use the equipment here. Nangong Yen heaved a sigh of relief, okay. Both sides came to an agreement, and the huge iron gate was finally opened. A number of survivors in tattered clothes, as well as a putrid stench, came out. There were over 200 survivors inside the base, with 60 soldiers. The rest of them were their families and other high-ranking officials. Nangong Yen came up to Yu Zhong and saluted. Nangong Yen greets leader. Yu Zhong did not stand on ceremony and immediately ordered, Give me a detailed report on the situation inside. Understood. Currently there, Nangong Yen immediately reported everything he knew to Yu Zhong. Inside the base, there were at least 15 intercontinental missiles armed with nuclear warheads within the base, instantly giving Yu Zhong a terrifying trump card. When Yu Zhong heard this, he was instantly overjoyed but managed to calm himself down. It was something he could only use as a last resort when things seemed bleak. Otherwise, he wouldn't even consider it against the zombies. The moment those missiles were launched, the Earth would be plunged into a radioactive environment. He would have to worry about the possibility of the zombies and mutant beasts further evolving. However, with them, he at least had a trump card. Should there be anyone who dared to threaten him with missiles, he would be able to retort. After obtaining this base, Yu Zhong quickly assigned his most loyal subordinates over and began the training under Nangong Yang. Having made his preparations, Yu Zhong went back to Ho-Hot City. Lei Yun had obtained a large number of the 8-leaf blue flowers with Lai Mingyi's help, and after returning to Ho-Hot City, they established a research center to begin research into the mutant flora. At the same time, Li Guang and Hua Ran led 2 troops to continue pushing towards the east, annihilating many zombies, and recovering countless cities and towns. The main bulk of the zombies had already been collected by that mutant zombie, leaving behind very few that could not withstand the assault of the 2 well-equipped forces. As the rate of reclaiming cities grew, More facilities and some military bases were discovered, and the resources were distributed to the 1st Regiment, 2nd Brigade, and the 4th Brigade. Hua Ran's 3rd Brigade was armed with plenty of firearms, and the amount was just sufficient. As for tanks, armored vehicles, unmanned drones, IFVs, and assault helicopters, they weren't provided any yet. However, even without all those, the 3rd Brigade was still able to make use of their tools and wits to wipe out small zombie hordes. At the same time, Hua Ran made use of his system equipment to train up a decent number of enhancers. On this day, Hua Ran was leading 3,000 riders into a county to lure out the zombies. They prepared some traps and managed to lure the zombies into the traps before killing them. Hua Ran watched his troops struggling to perform the old-fashioned way, his heart feeling slightly sour. Our equipment is still lacking. Compared to the 1st Regiment and 2nd Brigade, there's no way to compare. The 3rd Brigade had the lousiest equipment, and while everyone had a gun, they were all old antique. They couldn't even compare to their melee weapons. As to the melee weapons, Yu Zhong was generous. Whatever the 3rd Brigade needed, the factories would churn them out and deliver to the 3rd Brigade. Hua Ran was clear that the 3rd Brigade was no match for the 1st Regiment, 2nd Brigade and 4th Brigade in terms of weapons. If they were to revolt, even the 4th Regiment that was comprised of ex-Scum battalion members would be able to take them down easily. Right as Hua Ran was thinking to himself, 13 soldiers in military clothing suddenly appeared from a corner. The 13 soldiers had just appeared and immediately, rifles were trained on them. The aura exuding from the numerous enhancer experts caused them to not dare make rash move. Is this Yu Zhong's troops? They don't seem to be much. The leader of the 13 soldiers assessed the equipment of Hua Ran troops and sighed. Hua Ran glanced at them and asked, "Who are you?" The leader replied solemnly, "I'm Dong Han, and I'm the envoy sent by the Greater China Alliance. We hope to meet leader Yu Zhong." Hua Ran summoned a decent evolver and gave an order. "Oh, got it, Jolly Mu, send them to Ho Hot City." "Understood." Jolly Mu responded, and led 100 soldiers to escort Dong Han and his party towards Ho Hot City. Is this Ho Hot City? They already reclaimed it? The moment Dong Han and his men entered and saw the bustling streets, their hearts were rocked and their eyes filled with shock. They didn't dare believe their eyes. Dong Han came from the Greater China Alliance, and they had already conquered a few counties, but they didn't dare touch the major cities. In the past, they had tried to attack a city once, and the wave of 1,000,000 zombies enveloped their troop. Those alive managed to flee, but they had suffered a great loss then. Ho Hot City was a major city and had over 2,000,000 zombies in the past. Such a city was actually reclaimed by Yu Zhong. This caused Dong Han and the rest to feel astonished. What was even more shocking, the streets were filled with food stalls and vendors. Food was precious in the apocalypse, and even in the territories of the Greater China Alliance, there weren't such scenes. After all, the moment there was a display of food, countless people would go crazy. And yet, since Yu Zhong had reclaimed many cities, and obtained a huge amount of resources, adding on to his research of the mutant rice tree, his food output was enough to support his territories. Since the other factions had not reached his level, they could not do what he did. Dong Han and his men watched the look of bliss and contentment on the faces of the people here. They couldn't help but feel envious. This place of Yu Zhong is truly prosperous. Ho Hot City seems to already regain its former stability. The Greater China Alliance claimed to have a wide reach, but each of their territories was governed by some small-time characters, and they came together to form the alliance. All of their places had not yet recovered to a degree of stability, and the weak were still preyed on by the strong, and there was still lawlessness everywhere. If it weren't for their own convictions, Dong Han and the rest might have been tempted to join Yu Zhong already. Chapter 675. Strategic Granary. Chapter 675. Strategic Granary. Dong Han came up to Yu Zhong, assessing him carefully as he spoke with a neither overbearing nor servile attitude. "I'm Dong Han, the envoy from the Greater China Alliance, pleased to meet leader Yu Zhong." Yu Zhong replied indifferently, "The Greater China Alliance? Whatever your motive, just say it." Dong Han's gaze turned fervent as he spoke. "Leader Yu Zhong, our leader Shimen Tianxiong was a minister before the apocalypse. Our Greater China Alliance is orthodox. I'm here on official orders, representing the country and citizens, hoping that you'll join us. We can work together to kill the zombies and restore the glory of our country. As long as you're willing to join us, Leader Shimen is willing to confer upon you the position of a chairman of the China Development Committee. You will receive plenty of benefits. In the future, if we successfully reclaim the entire country, based on your contributions, you can become one of the 10 great founding fathers and receive the respect and admiration of our people." After the apocalypse, Shimen Tianxiong had been one of the few surviving ministers and was also one of the most powerful politicians in the past. Because of his status, he had easily gained control over a surviving troop near the capital. At the same time, many factions decided to join him. The military only served to obey, and since Shimen Tianxiong was one of the ministers, many soldiers were willing to follow his command. Thus, his rate of expansion had been naturally smoother than Yu Zhong. Dong Han looked at Yu Zhong with a look of confidence. Using those previous words about the country and orthodoxies, he had managed to persuade countless factions. Most of Shimen Tianxiong's troops were in fact won over by Dong Han's words. As long as he brought out promises of glory and riches, those commanders naturally gave in and joined Shimen Tianxiong. Yu Zhong's eyes flashed with a strange light as he replied mildly, "Chairman of the China Development Committee? You want me to hand over the control of my troops?" Dong Han continued to persuade, "That's right. Leader Yu Zhong, whatever you've been doing is considered privatization, and if we're to pursue matters, your actions have already violated several laws and regulations. However, as the times are different, you have saved many people. As long as you surrender your military might, the government would not fault you for your actions and allow you to continue to contribute to the country. In the future books, you will be known as a hero for everyone to learn from." Yu Zhong looked at Dong Han with a sardonic smile. "Enough of your bullshit. This has all been established with my own effort. Do you want to take it away from me? Fight me for it. If you're here to talk nonsense, you can scram. Just a little minister and he wants to represent the country and citizens? What a joke." Currently, Yu Zhong had over 2 million survivors under him, with over 40,000 elite troops, and Dong Han actually intended to try wrestle control with just word. It was impossible for Yu Zhong to give in. The moment Yu Zhong gave up his military command, his subordinates would be purged. Even his own life would be threatened. If he gave up his military command, his life, possessions, and women would end up in the hands of others, and his fate would no longer be his to control. How could he agree to such conditions? Even if he agreed, his subordinates would not. They had vested interests, and would definitely not agree to surrender to this Greater China Alliance. One bespectacled man beside Dong Han had a furious expression as he barked, "What guts! How dare you speak in this manner? You're going against the country and people." Yu Zhong frowned, and one of the soldiers by his side, Niu Guangming, shot forwards and slapped the bespectacled man harshly. His teeth were knocked out while Niu Guangming spat, "Shut your dog trap. Leader didn't get you to talk, you guys better be obedient." Seeing how ferocious and violent Niu Guangming was, Dong Han and his men were frightened. Dong Han knew that his words had no meaning anymore. He hesitated a while, gathering his thoughts. "Our Greater China Alliance would like to form an alliance with you and join forces to take down a granary of the capital. Are you interested?" When Yu Zhong heard this, his eyes flashed with bewilderment and he asked with suspicion, The granary is such a precious resource, how would you guys be so kind as to share with us? The strategic granary of the capital had the ration to feed over 10 million people. It was truly a precious resource. Its importance was on par with most armories, and if Yu Zhong himself came in possession of it, he would definitely not share. Dong Han continued, "There's a huge mutant beast horde there, with mutant cats, mutant dogs, mutant snakes, mutant cockroaches and all sorts of strange beasts. Our Greater China Alliance is unable to breach through, therefore they have sent me to contact you to recover this granary." Yu Zhong pondered before asking, "After we reclaim it, how are we splitting it?" Dong Han responded smoothly, 50-50. Without missing a beat, Yu Zhong retorted, 70-30, 70 belongs to me, you guys take 30. Dong Han frowned, 45-55. 60-40, 60 me, 40 yours. Dong Han immediately broke into a smile. Deal? 60-40 it is, in any case there are enough rations there. 40% will suffice for us. You're truly easy to work with. Yu Zhong eyed Dong Han with appreciation and asked curiously, Dong Han, you're a smart person, why did you start off with that bullshit? Dong Han responded with a strange glint, it's not. Leader Yu Zhong, I have used those words to persuade countless people. Some words, if I don't use them, how would I know what the other party thinks? If I wasn't that forthright, who knew if you were actually willing to join us or not? Yu Zhong's eyes lit up and he assessed this man again, his respect and admiration growing. Dong Han, I appreciate your skills, how about working for me? Dong Han was smart and knew when to retreat. His reaction was smooth, and he was truly a professional at communications. Yu Zhong had gathered a number of experts beneath him, and the closest he had was only Lien Dezhong. Dong Han chuckled, thank you for your praise, Leader Yu Zhong. I'm still a person of the Greater China Alliance, and have no intentions of leaving it as of now. Yu Zhong's eyes flashed with disappointment. What a pity! Dong Han replied, other than joining forces to take down the granary, our Greater China Alliance also hopes to buy rations from you. Yu Zhong asked, oh, what do you intend on using to purchase? Dong Han replied, pearls, gold, diamonds, antiques. Yu Zhong's face turned sullen as he replied coldly, we only use weapons, mutant beast meat, mutant beast materials, and fuel. 1 gene of mutant beast meat can exchange for 3 gene of rations. The weight of military weapons shall be the weight of the food exchanged. Mutant beasts materials will use another form of trading value. For now, the hides are our priority. 1 gene of fuel can exchange for 1 gene of food. Dong Han immediately chuckled bitterly. All these that Yu Zhong was asking for were what the Greater China Alliance also sorely needed. It was especially so for the military firepower. They were stringent even on ammunition. Although the Greater China Alliance had opened a few weapons facilities, they were still lacking in factories. Every bullet they spent was a bullet gone. Fuel was also a precious resource now, without it, tanks and other vehicles could not move. As to the mutant beast parts, they were all vital materials in armor and weapons. They were obviously reluctant to give them up. Dong Han pondered before gritting his teeth. Leader Yu Zhong, we're willing to exchange 4 top beautiful virgins in exchange for 400 tons of rations. I can assure you, they're definitely on par with top models. You'll definitely like them. After we take down the granary, we're willing to give you 4,000 tons of rations. Yu Zhong's gaze turned savage. No. If you want to exchange manpower, it's possible. I want experts in the fields of optoelectronics, machine manufacturing, computing, doctors and any other professional fields. Every expert will be exchanged for a set amount of rations. Other than those, I want all beautiful virgins and a large number of them. Every one of them will be exchanged according to my standards as well. Many of my subordinates are still single. You can also exchange with children, every child for 2 gene of rations. As to other women, 1 gene for 1. Dong Han heard this and his scalp turned numb. He could only agree, all right. Yu Zhong then embraced Zhuo Yatong beside him, planting a kiss on her cheek as he spoke. Oh right, I'm still lacking some precious stones. My darling here loves them, as well as pearls and the mutant beast's nucleus. This time, you may use those nuclei to exchange. The bigger they are the better, the more value in the trade. If you do this well, I'll treat you well. Dong Han looked at Yu Zhong somewhat enviously. Understood. After both sides had come to an agreement, Dong Han left the place, returning to the Greater China Alliance. Cielo County was a small town near Zhangkou City. There were people within the town, and from afar, one could tell that there were survivors gathered in the town. This was the headquarters of the Greater China Alliance. Chapter 676. The Five Heads of the Greater China Alliance. Chapter 676. The Five Heads of the Greater China Alliance. The Greater China Alliance was one of the largest factions in China. Their reach extended across the country, with 60-member group. The survivors under them also numbered in the millions. Their headquarters was at the Cielo County near the capital. The president of the alliance was Shimen Tianxiong, and he had gone to Cielo County to do a routine inspection. He managed to avoid the initial devastation of the apocalypse and made use of his position to gather troops, establishing the alliance. The survivors of the entire alliance were definitely in the millions, but they were all spread out and thus, the actual number in Cielo County was only about 200,000. Inside a lavish mansion, 5 men sat on a sofa and stared at Dong Han. You're saying that he wants experts in the optoelectronics, mechanical engineering, and medical fields? One elderly man frowned, his face flushed. This was the president of the alliance, Shimen Tianxiong. Dong Han replied, "That's right." A middle-aged man of about 35 to 36, dressed in a suit, asked slowly, "Seems like his ambitions are big. He has already considered the future as a governing body. He isn't simple." This was one of the 5 heads of the alliance, Chan Wei Hua. He had been a boss figure in the past and awakened as an evolver. He relied on his own power to become one of the top figures within the alliance. Another man with a thick gold chain around his neck and branded clothes, with system rings as well as jewelry around his fingers, spoke out, "You guys are overestimating him. The fact that he wants so many women proves that he's just some lustful person. He won't amount to much." This particular man was called Zheng Delong, and he was a farmer in the past, awakening during the apocalypse with immense strength. He was one of the rare triple attribute evolvers and made use of his strength to carve out a territory for himself, before being inducted into the alliance. A neat and handsome man with gold-rimmed glasses and a slicked hairdo spoke out coldly, his gaze icy. He doesn't want just women, he wants to populate. This man was called Su Xinghe, a low-level cadre from before the apocalypse. After awakening as a peak-level evolver, he used his wits and abilities to climb up the ladder, ending up as a head figure. He could tell Yu Zhong's motive. There was a remaining military personnel with sword-like brows and a strict demeanor. He was called Zhang Jianxing. He was the commander of the army, and although he and Shimen Tianxiong were ordinary people, he had the command of the army and was one of the head figures of the alliance. Zheng Delong squinted and asked with an honest look, "Oh, why population? He already has 1 million survivors, he shouldn't be lacking in manpower." Su Xing he had seen through Yu Zhong's objectives, and replied slowly, "His ambition is huge. He wants us to exchange experts because he lacks those talents. He wanted women because he wants to promote childbirth. Without women, how could he grow his population? As for the children, he could groom them and they would rely on him and become his loyal supporters in the future. He doesn't have to worry about men because as long he implements his plans, he could win the men from our hands. He's truly crafty and hard to deal with." Hearing his analysis, the rest of the heads fell silent, their brows furrowed, and found themselves agreeing with his words. Chan Weihua asked Su Xinghe, what should we do then? We don't have enough resources. Cielo County had 200,000 people, and every day their consumption was huge. Shimen Tianxiong had already tried restricting the outflow. Other than the 10,000-strong army and 4,000 subordinates of the five heads who ate half their original meals, the rest of the survivors could only get gruel. Even then, it was still an astonishing dwindling of their rations. If it weren't for their scavenging troops heading out to look for food, they could not support themselves. Yu Zhong's power had already reached the borders of the Greater China Alliance, and they found themselves stuck between Yu Zhong's harsh terms of exchange and their own resources. Even if there weren't any major operations, they could at most hold out for another week. Zheng Delong continued squinting and suggested, "Why don't we try attacking the granary first? Since there are mutant beasts there, we should be able to gain some meat from there." Su Xinghe shook his head and rejected. "There should be at least 10 Type 3 mutant beasts. If we don't send all our forces, we will definitely lose. But then, if we did so, Yu Zhong would take the chance to attack us. Then whatever we have built up, we would lose." Type 3 beasts were no joke, each of them was terrifying existence. Yu Zhong had 10 Type 3 treants with him, and each time he launched a night raid, their rate of slaughter was extremely terrifying. Chan Weihua asked, "Then what?" Su Xinghe's eyes flashed with fervor. "We can only exchange the people. Once we hold out for this period and implement that plan, we will recover whatever we've lost." Shimen Tianxiong turned silent, before his gaze also turned resolute. "All right, let him be smug for a while." Shimen Tianxiong had made his decision and sent over 1,000 experts and professors in various fields, as well as a large number of women towards Hohhot City. Yu Zhong also kept his word, sending the rations over. Without his support, Cielo County would have faced a catastrophic food shortage. In this exchange, Yu Zhong gained a large number of talents, as well as a huge pile of precious stones, diamonds, and mutant beasts nuclei, of which he had obtained 13 Type 3 nuclei, 60 Type 2 nuclei, and over 200 mutant beast nuclei. After the Greater China Alliance received the food, they began to send envoys to urge Yu Zhong to join forces with them to attack the granary. Yu Zhong wasn't particularly in a rush, instead, sending Huaran and Lai Ming-yi as well as their 2nd Brigade and 3rd Brigade to continue on their mission to wipe out the zombies in the surrounding counties, before reclaiming those territories. The horde controlled by the mutant zombie had continued northeast, and although they weren't moving towards the capital, there were still a lot of zombies in the nearby counties making their way to congregate. However, these zombies were slowly being cleared by Yu Zhong's troops before they could join up with the rest. The Greater China Alliance watched as Yu Zhong continued to reclaim territory after territory, and they couldn't sit still, feeling the pressure, and they started to deploy their own troops to conquer the other towns. There were over 14,000 soldiers in the Greater China Alliance. Although they had no way of contending with a million-strong horde, they could still deal with tens or hundreds of thousands in those small counties. Yu Zhong watched them and didn't send any troops to attack them. After all, the zombies at the capital were too many, over 2 million. At the same time, there were too many people in the surrounding towns and counties. With just Yu Zhong's factions, even using 15 missiles would not be able to wipe out the zombies fully. Thus, as long as the Greater China Alliance attacked the zombies instead of him, he could still tolerate their existence. Just as both factions went on their tacit understanding in clearing the zombies, there was a sudden movement from the 3 million zombies in Zhangkou City. They left the city and formed a wave that made its way towards the capital. Yu Zhong sent many unmanned drones to conduct reconnaissance on the zombies, and the moment the zombies left, he immediately deployed the Tiger Wolf army to head there and clean up the remaining zombies. He reclaimed the city before the Greater China Alliance even had a chance to react. The Greater China Alliance was plunged into a sudden disadvantage. They realized they were suddenly surrounded on three sides by Yuzhong's factions. Left with no choice, they could only continue towards the northeast direction and conquer two cities, and other smaller villages. Although they conquered the two cities and annihilated over hundreds of thousands of zombies, they lost hundreds of soldiers and wasted a large amount of ammunition. Their military strength suffered a huge loss. Under their efforts, Zhangkou City was jointly shared by Yuzhong and them. Both sides maintained an impasse. They didn't dare to attack Yuzhong, and Yuzhong wasn't willing to wipe out this ally that could help kill the zombies. Yuzhong knew that if he wanted to swallow them, he would have to pay a huge price as well. In the end, forcing them to fight the zombies wasn't a bad choice. Chapter 677 Arrival of the Beast Horde. Chapter 677 Arrival of the Beast Horde. By now, the Central Plains had an established governing cabinet, and the troops had cleared out the zombies near Zhangkou City according to plans. Having secured the control of Zhangkou City, Yuzhong then led the 1st Regiment and its armored division, the 2nd Brigade, the 3rd Brigade and stationed them in Zhangkou City. After resting for a few days, Yuzhong personally led the 2nd Brigade and 3rd Brigade, together with the 10,000-strong army of the Greater China Alliance, as they made their way towards the granary in the city. The Greater China Alliance also sent out their longtime commander Zhang Jianxing, their strongest evolver Zhen Delong, as well as the crafty evolver Su Xinghe. Along the way, although both troops maintained their guard against each other, both sides had the common goal of taking down the granary. Hence, while tension was high, there wasn't any exchange of fire. Under those conditions, both armies entered Nanmin Town. The zombies in Nanmin Town had already been cleared out by the recon soldiers sent to investigate the granary previously. By the time they entered the town, it was in the evening. Both armies occupied half the town each and began to prepare their dinner. Yuzhong's troops ate rice, as well as broth, together with their luncheon meat, mutant beast and mutant fish meat, whereas the soldiers of the Greater China Alliance only ate bland cornbread. The Greater China Alliance had managed to gain a large amount of corn and cornflour after obtaining two cities. Thus, their meals became cornbread. As for canned meat, luncheon meat, and all sorts of nourishing food, these were only issued to the higher command, and the ordinary soldiers could not eat them. Shit, they got some really good food there. One of the Alliance soldiers came back to his own camp, looking at the two cornbread in his hands, and thought back to what Yuzhong's side was eating. He could not help but curse in envy. Another soldier bit into his cornbread and spoke, "Be content. 1 month ago, we didn't even have enough to eat, it's already good that we could eat our fill now." Not so long ago, the Greater China Alliance was facing a food shortage, and few among their troops could eat their fill. Compared to then, they were truly in a better position. Another soldier looked around before speaking in a low voice. "Did you guys hear? The leader over there is called Yuzhong. He had already led his troops to conquer Hohhot City, Baoshi City and Zhangkou City, and many other places." One soldier grumbled, "I should have known. We stayed so long in those lousy places. How can we compare with others?" On one side, there was a valiant leader who had gone to conquer the whole of Central Plains, while the other had kept themselves holed up in a few broken cities. The soldiers were naturally unhappy. They were after all humans with their own thinking and not undead zombies that only knew to follow orders. That same soldier spoke softly, "Then do you know? It seems that if any of us were to go over and pass their questioning, we could become one of them. As a soldier there, not only is there meat to eat, if one gains enough merit, they can get their own wives and form a family again." The soldiers were immediately stirred, as they crowded around in a bid to make things clear. Is that for real? In the camp of the Greater China Alliance, many small groups started their own conversations, and many were tempted to join Yuzhong. There were over 10,000 soldiers in the Greater China Alliance, and they comprised of the survivors that had joined in the past year. Their sense of belonging wasn't as strong. Especially with a situation where they couldn't eat their fill, they were naturally dissatisfied. In the dark of the night, as night fell over this town, many pairs of eyes lit up in the distance. A sea of mutant rats came rushing towards the town. Mutant beasts! The mutant beasts are here! Both Yu Zhong and Zhang Jianxing had been cautious and deployed many experts to be on sentry. The moment the mutant rat horde came close, the alarm was sounded. The moment the alarm rang out, all the soldiers got ready and gathered in their positions. After they got in position, there was a huge difference in the troops. Yu Zhong's soldiers had been through countless battles with zombies and mutant beasts. After the battles, their experience had groomed them into elites. The moment they heard the alarm, they had swiftly gathered under their respective commanders. As for the Alliance troops, many were just living meal to meal and had not undergone any formal training. They gathered in a messy manner, some even began to panic. That was the difference between a well-trained troop and a motley bunch of people. What an elite troop! Zhang Jianxing saw the soldiers under Yu Zhong responding so efficiently, and he looked at his own subordinates. His lips pursed and a chill overcame his heart. It was not that Zhang Jianxing did not know the importance of training. However, the Alliance had always been lacking in food, and if they trained without proper nutrition, it would be dangerous. Their previous food shortage simply did not allow them to. However, it was not that they lacked elite. 1,000 elite soldiers got into position with a similar speed to Yu Zhong's troops and followed their orders to take up their defenses. Yu Zhong came to the front lines of the town. At this time, a number of flares lit up the night and area, and everyone could see the sea-like horde of mutant rats making their way towards the town. Open fire! Bullets flew from the Alliance, blanketing the mutant rats. Yu Zhong watched them and did not issue any order to fire, instead, turning to Bai Lu and commanded, "Do it! Eliminate them!" Bai Lu closed her eyes, and like a goddess, she waved her hands and a spiritual wave spread out towards the nearby treants. 3,000 treants charged towards the mutant rats the moment they were touched by the spiritual wave. The 3,000 treants charged right into the horde of mutant rats, using their sharp claws to tear the mutant rats apart. These were all creatures of above level 20, their barks were tough, and the claws of mutant rats could not pierce through easily. The claws of the treants were much sharper in comparison. The 3,000 treants had stood guard outside the town like rocks, and faced the incoming wave of mutant rats, tearing them apart and gobbling up their corpses. These treants still had room for evolving. As long as they consumed enough flesh, blood, and essence, they could become stronger. The commanders of the Alliance looked at Yu Zhong and his 3,000 treants, their eyes flashing with envy. Strong? They could actually command such freaks. Over at their own side, while their soldiers were firing at will, many of the mutant rats managed to breach their defenses and bit their soldiers to death. However, they made a swift reaction, as a number of fire trucks drove forwards and fired a few arrows with oil into the rats, and lit them up. Long walls of flames instantly appeared, separating some of the mutant rats, and forcing many of them towards Yu Zhong's direction. The treants managed to hold off the huge horde of mutant rats, as any of them that managed to reach the treants were instantly sliced apart. Soon, there was a mountain of mutant rats' corpses in front of the 3,000 treants. As for the human soldiers, they watched quietly as the two opposing sides of mutant creatures tore each other apart. From time to time, one or two of the treants would be broken down by the combined attacks of the countless mutant rats. However, many more treants would retaliate. The intense battle continued for an entire half-hour, after which, there were suddenly terrifying roars that resounded from behind the mutant rat. A number of mutant dogs, mutant cats, mutant lizards, mutant snakes, mutant scorpions, mutant tigers, mutant apes, mutant gorillas and other variants all appeared, bringing a terrifying pressure. "Fire the cannons! Fire the cannons!" Yu Zhong watched the swarm of mutant beasts and his eyes narrowed as he gave the order. Among the sea of mutant beasts, there were many Type 2 mutant beasts and giant ones. They were not something that the Treants could handle. Should the Type 2 mutant beasts charge through, the 3,000 Treants would be immediately ripped apart. Hong! 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 Yu Zhong's troops and the Alliance troops brought their own heavy artillery, and both sides began to fire, as powerful missiles rained down upon the mutant beast horde, blasting large patches of them into oblivion. Heavy firepower was the answer to dealing with mutant beasts' hordes. As long as the missiles landed, even a Type 4 mutant beast would be heavily injured. Of course, a single round could instantly kill a Type 2 or Type 3 mutant beast, but it was not the case for a Type 4 mutant beast. Under the rain of heavy artillery, many of the mutant beasts were killed, but much more managed to evade the rain of heavy fire and charge towards Yu Zhong and the Alliance. Chapter 678. Fierce Battle with the Mutant Beast Horde. Chapter 678. Fierce Battle with the Mutant Beast Horde. There were numerous Type 2 mutant beasts charging for the two armies, each of them possessing a terrifying strength. Facing those Type 2 mutant beasts, many of the soldiers of the Alliance began to pull out their rockets and grenade launchers, firing at the Type 2 mutant beasts, injuring them gravely. However, even so, the Type 2 mutant beasts managed to charge through their lines and began to unleash mayhem and hell upon the soldiers. With the support of the other soldiers, the Alliance paid the price of 50 lives before killing the Type 2 mutant beasts that had breached their defenses. Over at Yu Zhong's side, 300 soldiers wielded laser guns and fired from afar. The laser beams pierced the heads of the Type 2 mutant beasts, continuing through some of the other lesser mutant beasts behind them. When the soldiers of the Alliance saw the laser guns in the hands of Yu Zhong's soldiers, their hearts were filled with shock. Laser guns. They had already managed to develop such weapons. The laser gun was a technology that many major countries were researching into before the apocalypse. However, while the technology of laser existed, converting it into a weapon was likely something that required another 20 years. However, there were laser guns now in the hands of Yu Zhong's soldiers, and this caused all the soldiers of the Alliance to be shocked. This meant that Yu Zhong already had a mature production line of laser guns. Furthermore, he already had the research ability. Zhang Jianxing watched as the soldiers fired the laser guns, turning the heads of the Type 2 mutant beasts into sieves, and they slumped dead after roaring in agony. His eyes narrowed in shock, and he immediately recognized the threat and importance of such a weapon. After the world changed, mutant beasts were evolving constantly. The Type 2 mutant beasts were already largely invulnerable to bullets, and their defenses were strong. While anti-tank missiles might deal some damage, the Type 3 mutant beasts were another tier higher. Ordinary soldiers were helpless against Type 2 mutant beasts, but with the laser guns, ordinary soldiers could kill them. In the future battles, any side that had laser guns would have a huge advantage. Zhang Jianxing had already realized that be it equipment, training or battle experience, Yu Zhong's troops were vastly superior to his own. If Yu Zhong had wanted them eliminated, he knew they would perish without a doubt. Jing Delong saw how easily Yu Zhong's soldiers were killing the Type 2 mutant beasts, and he couldn't help but feel a chill. What a terrifying army. Although Jing Delong was a peak evolver, he had no confidence that he could block the lasers. He was filled with trepidation towards the soldiers of Yu Zhong's troops. Strong. As the soldiers of varying ranks in the Alliance watched, their eyes were filled with a complicated gaze. With the support of the artillery, numerous mutant beasts were blasted to death, and the soldiers of the Alliance and Yu Zhong continued to defend their own positions, withstanding this wave of mutant beasts. After an hour, there was another earth-shaking roar from behind the hordes of mutant beasts. 10 Type 3 mutant beasts appeared in the sight of everybody. One was a 6 m tall ferocious ape, another was a 90 m long Type 3 green jiao serpent with a single horn, Another was a 6 m tall Type 3 golden scaled mouse, covered entirely in gold scales. There was a Type 3 red panther covered with red scales, a 10 m tall Type 3 mutant black gorilla, a Type 3 mutant dog that had thick black fur that made it look like a lion, a Type 3 giant turtle with a shell the size of a movable fortress, a Type 3 black-scaled ferocious boar of about 10 m, a Type 3 steel armor bull, 10 m tall and covered in metal, a Type 3 black-spotted spider of about 2 m, and finally, a Type 3 lycoy werewolf cat, that was larger than a panther, with extremely sharp claws. On top of the Type 3 red panther, there was a demon-like creature who stood 3 m tall, covered in a layer of gold scales. It had a tiger head, and yet it had golden wings behind its back. This creature stared at the town coldly. This creature with a tiger head suddenly let out a piercing howl, and all 9 Type 3 mutant beasts responded in kind, before charging right at the town. Of these beasts, the Type 3 lycoy and Type 3 mutant dog were the fastest, on par with lightning, and managed to breach the sound barrier. The Type 3 lycoy managed to charge right into the camp of the Alliance, and with a flash of its claws, many of the soldiers were ripped apart, their organs and brains splattering everywhere. It was a horrific sight. Zheng Delong eyed the Type 3 lycoy and shouted out in a solemn voice, "Su Xinghe, let's charge together." "Okay." Su Xinghe followed behind Zheng Delong, leading a dozen evolvers as they rushed towards the Type 3 lycoy. Zheng Delong activated his second-order werewolf transformation, and his muscles rippled, as he transformed into a 3 m tall werewolf. After he transformed, he activated his second-order high-speed movement, and pushed his speed to the limits of the sound barrier, rushing right at the Type 3 lycoy. With a swipe, he managed to rip a huge chunk of meat from the body of the beast. The Type 3 lycoy roared out in anger and slashed back at Zheng Delong. However, before it could reach his body, a powerful psychic barrier appeared in front of Zheng Delong. The Type 3 lycoy slapped the psychic barrier, causing it to disintegrate. Zheng Delong took the opportunity to escape the attack range of the Type 3 lycoy. Su Xinghe was a psychic enhancer, and his barriers were all well controlled. By working together with Zheng Delong, they had killed many Type 3 mutant beasts before. A dozen evolvers quickly reached the battlefield, unleashing their skills at the Type 3 lycoy. If any of them were to go against the beast alone, they would definitely be killed in an instant. However, working together with Su Xinghe and Zheng Delong who held it down, they could quickly unleash their abilities and injure the Type 3 lycoy heavily. On the other side, the Type 3 mutant dog had reached Yu Zhong's camp. However, it was met with a flash of a pale white fist. Yin Shuang burst forwards with a terrifying strength. Although the Type 3 mutant dog wasn't a strength-based mutant beast, its strength was still higher than humans, and most strength-based evolvers could not match it. It slashed viciously at Yin Shuang, intending to turn this little human into meat paste. A powerful explosion happened as the two parties brought forth their terrifying strength. With a loud hong, the right claw of the Type 3 mutant dog was blasted apart, its bones disintegrating. A large amount of blood sprayed out, and the ferocious dog was also sent tumbling back in a pathetic manner. Strong! Yu Zhong watched how Yin Shuang had sent it flying and praised. A single fist could actually send a Type 3 mutant beast flying back. Her strength was truly terrifying. Among the intelligent life forms Yu Zhong had, Yin Shuang did not have the ability to summon other sea mutant beasts like Hailan, nor the ability to control a mother tree or other trance like Bai Lu. She didn't seem to have any special skills, except her pure strength and speed. Even Yu Zhong with his steel body would be gravely injured if punched by her. She was truly an intelligent life form meant for combat. Enemies of father die. Yin Shuang's eyes shone with a bloodthirsty light, and her entire body shot forwards like a cannonball, her fist blasting towards the body of the Type 3 mutant dog. It caused the entire body to cave in, and a number of bones broke. The pitiful Type 3 mutant dog flew through the air, spitting out blood. Yin Shuang continued to give chase, forcing it to retreat further. Yuzhong looked at the other 7 incoming mutant beasts, and pulled out his electromagnetic gun, firing at the 10m tall Type 3 black gorilla. Although it was a large beast, its reaction was swift. Yuzhong had just fired, and it already dodged to the side. Yuzhong cocked the gun once more, and a beam shot out, penetrating the body of the black gorilla, leaving a large, smoking hole. The Type 3 black gorilla roared out in rage and pain and charged at Yuzhong as though nothing had happened. Its wound from the electromagnetic gun was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The Type 3 black gorilla wasn't exactly fast, but it was still at least 18 or 19 times faster than an ordinary human. However, its defense, recovery rate and strength were among the strongest of the Type 3 mutant beasts. As long as its head was not damaged or its heart pierced, it could quickly recover. Chapter 679 – Strange Change. Chapter 679 – Strange Change. The Type 3 green Jiao serpent opened its jaws and activated its innate ability. A large green cloud of poison spread out all over the soldiers of the Alliance, enveloping the defense post. Many soldiers instantly started to rot, their flesh dripping off their bones. They struggled for a while, before helplessly turning into a puddle of liquid. The soldiers of the Alliance watched as their comrades were dissolved into liquid and their faces were filled with shock. Many were stricken by fear and immediately turned to flee. With that single attack of the Type 3 green Jiao serpent, the defense post of the Alliance immediately crumbled, and the suppressing fire on the mutant beast also stopped. However, there were still elites within the Alliance, and Zhang Jianxing quickly assigned a platoon of soldiers to charge forward and defend against the attacks of the mutant beast. After spitting out the poison fog, the Type 3 green Jiao serpent swiftly headed towards Yuzhong's direction to spew out another round. Yuzhong's eyes turned cold and he flicked his right hand, congealing a ball of devil flame. He then threw a punch towards the skies, and a beam of flame that seemed to be able to burn through everything fired at the poison fog, incinerating the green fog into smoke. The Type 3 green Jiao serpent wanted to continue spewing its poison, but it was unfortunately met with a volley of artillery fire, enveloping it. Hong! Hong! Following the sound of an explosion, the Type 3 green Jiao serpent was injured heavily by the blasts and was sent tumbling to one side. Chance! A small cat hidden at a high vantage point watched quietly, and its eyes flashed with a human-like intelligence. As the Alliance and Yuzhong's forces were entangled with the Type 3 mutant beasts, a number of large trucks came from the distance. From within them, numerous Kingdom of God soldiers, adjudicators and judges came charging out wearing high-level defense vests. These Kingdom of God troops began to launch an assault on Yuzhong's troop. One soldier came up to Zhang Jianxing in panic and reported, "Commander? Commander, it's bad. The Kingdom of God has just attacked Yuzhong's forces." "What? Without my order, how can they choose this time to attack? If the Yuzhong's troops are done, we will be killed by the beasts as well. Mr. Erect, this wasn't our agreement." Zhang Jianxing's face turned steely as he questioned the European beside him. According to the agreement between the Alliance and the Kingdom of God, both sides would launch an attack on Yuzhong's forces after they had repelled the wave of mutant beasts. The Kingdom of God would then support the Alliance to swallow up Yuzhong's forces. Zhang Jianxing had not expected for Erek to suddenly choose this time to attack. Erek revealed a carefree smile. "Mr. Zhang Jianxing, this is the best chance to kill Yuzhong. We will not let go of this chance. Thank you for your foolishness, you are of no use now. Go and die." As he smiled at Zhang Jianxing, another European beside him who wore a black leather suit grabbed at Zhang Jianxing with a stern expression. 5 air blades shot out from his fingertips and instantly sliced Zhang Jianxing's head off. "Go to hell, yellow-skinned monkeys!" Another male in a jacket and cowboy pants laughed savagely and pointed. A number of transparent lines shot out from all directions and twirled among the people present, slicing the numerous soldiers of the Alliance into pieces. As things had progressed too fast, the experts and commanders of the Alliance had not the time to react. They didn't expect their ally to act against them, and they died with a look of loss and shock on their faces. Erek looked at the corpses with an expression of distaste, speaking to Wade and Wilson. Wade, Wilson, Yuzhong is yours to handle. Once you've accomplished your mission, let's head to Heaven's Playground to enjoy ourselves properly. Wilson, who wore the cowboy pants, laughed. Your treat. Erek replied, Okay. All right. Then you can wait here for our good news. Wilson chuckled, and in a flash, both he and Wade disappeared from their location, making their way towards the distance. Fuck. Those bastards truly had something up their sleeves. They actually chose this time to attack. Damn it. Yuzhong had always been on guard against the Alliance, and had likewise stationed a few soldiers of the 3rd Brigade to keep an eye on them. The moment the Kingdom of God made a move, Hua Ran cursed and led his elites to defend their positions, engaging the Kingdom of God in combat. These Kingdom of God elites had the advanced rifles, and they even had infrared vision, as well as other advanced equipment. As for the judges and adjudicators, they were all from Germany and had undergone strict military training, as well as life-and-death situations. Coupled with the job change of the system, their combat prowess had been pushed to another tier. Although there were only 800 of them, the moment they attacked, they completely suppressed the 3rd Brigade. Commander, we're being pummeled here. Please send help. Commander, please send help. A platoon. At the very least. We're going to lose at this rate. The judges and adjudicators were led by 12 divine envoys and 36 envoys in waiting, and they launched a terrifying assault on the 3rd Brigade. Modern warfare took lives extremely fast due to the firearms against firearms, unlike in the past, where melee combat was more drawn out. However, due to the apocalypse, there were evolvers and enhancers and all sorts of new battle technique. Many evolvers could make use of their powerful skills to attack enemies, causing the speed of the battle to become even faster. The divine envoys were all peak evolvers, and their battle ability would not lose to Hua Ran. With 12 of them attacking, the tide of the battle was with the Kingdom of God, and every second, there was a 3rd Brigade soldier being slaughtered. Hua Ran heard the pleas for help and his head hurt. Those bastards, how are those foreigners so strong? Suddenly, his mind became clear. The Kingdom of God. That's right, they're the soldiers from the Kingdom of God. No wonder they're so strong. Jia Si, go inform the leader, request support from him. Understood. Jia Si replied and quickly went over to Yuzhong's side. Hua Ran then ordered solemnly, Hua Bulatuo, go lead the special forces of the 3rd Brigade. Hua Bulatuo's special forces within the 3rd Brigade was formed of a number of Mongolian elites after they had joined Yuzhong. There were 22 natural evolvers and had been part of the Chieshue forces in the past. Yes. Hua Bulatuo acknowledged and rushed off. Hua Bulatuo led the forces of the 3rd Brigade and clashed with the Kingdom of God forces. Although they had suffered casualties under the assault of the Kingdom of God, they were extremely strong-willed and had no intentions of retreating. The entire 3rd Brigade knew there was no way back for them. The moment they fled, Yuzhong would exterminate them on legit grounds. By then, they would no longer have their own troops nor pride. To them, honor was the only thing keeping them banded together. Without it or resolution, it was hard to become a top-notch force. Trash. On what grounds do you yellow-skinned monkeys think you can impede us? Go to hell. One divine envoy became a huge werewolf, and his eyes flashed with a vicious glint. He laughed savagely and charged forwards, tearing out the heart of one soldier from the 3rd Brigade. Countless bullets fell upon the werewolf, and he managed to dodge most of them, while those that hit just bounced off. Animal! One soldier roared out in fury, his eyes bloodshot as he charged for the werewolf. Trash! Since you want to die, I'll grant it to you. The werewolf laughed cruelly, his body flashing, and his claws entered the chest of the soldier. The soldier revealed an ugly smile as the grenade in his hands landed on the ground, and with a huge boom, the explosion enveloped both of them together. As the dust settled, the werewolf's right arm and leg were blasted apart, his body riddled with wounds, but even then, he still had not died. How could this be? The werewolf's eyes were filled with shock. At this time, 2 rocket launchers blasted out on his body, blasting his body apart. A divine envoy of the kingdom of God had died in combat. This was the cruel battlefield. Even peak evolvers would be killed by ordinary people they underestimate. After all, these were ordinary soldiers with extraordinary fighting spirit and powerful weapons. The Ross start abruptly here, foregoing mention of the ferocious ape previously. Chapter 680. Fierce Battle with the Apostles. Chapter 680. Fierce Battle with the Apostles. Wilson came to the battlefield and saw that while the Koji soldiers had the advantage, they still could not destroy the 3rd Brigade entirely. He chuckled coldly, "What an eyesore! They still haven't settled this, yellow monkeys. Wade, it's our turn. Let's go kill all the evolvers first." Wade nodded slightly and immediately charged towards the special forces led by Hua Mu Latu. In a few breaths, Wilson and Wade had appeared in front of the special forces. The 2 of them were quadruple attribute evolvers, with strength, agility, spirit, and endurance as their main attribute. They were peak evolvers and their system equipment was considered top-notch, gathered through the efforts of the Kingdom of God. They were at least level 4 and above. Wilson immediately waved his hands the moment he appeared in front of the Mongolian special forces, sending 5 blades of air out. That caused 5 soldiers of the 3rd Brigade to be sliced in 2 at the waist, fresh blood pouring everywhere. Wade transformed into a blur, with 10 transparent lines on his fingers as sharp as knives. He charged through the crowd, slicing the soldiers into countless parts. Within the special forces, no one seemed to be able to defend against the 2 of them. "Beast! I'll kill you!" Hua Mu Latuo watched as the 2 apostles slaughtered his subordinates, and his eyes turned bloodshot, before leading 7 evolvers towards them. Hua Mu Latuo was a level 60 spirit-based evolver, and his main skill was earth manipulation. As he slapped down hard on the ground, a number of earth spikes shot out from the ground, each about 6 m tall, striking at Wilson and Wade. The 2 apostles flashed and dodged the spikes like ghosts. Die! The 7 evolvers formed a small team that launched a sudden assault on Wilson with a pronged attack. A number of gravity pulses, flaming arrows, flying blades and ice shards formed a myriad of attacks that slammed towards Wilson, together with a few other shockwaves, weapons as well as summon beasts. "It's useless. There's only one outcome for you guys, which is death." Wilson faced the onslaught of attacks and his face revealed a cold smile. He extended his fingers and 7 large air blades shot out as though they had a will of their own, instantly slicing the 7 evolvers into halves. After taking out the 7 evolvers in a single move, the myriad of attacks dissolved onto an air barrier that Wilson had conjured around him, not damaging him in the slightest. How is this possible? How is this strong? Hua Mu Latuo stared at the uninjured Wilson, his eyes flashing with shock. The 7 evolvers had joined hands, and their attack was something even Hua Ran dared not face head-on. However, they had actually died in an instant under Wilson's methods, and Hua Mu Latuo could not believe his eyes. "Go to hell!" All of a sudden, there was a shout, and 10 transparent lines pierced through his head before they started spinning and sliced up his brain. Hua Mu Latuo, the strongest expert within the 3rd Brigade, had died. With his death, the rest of the soldiers immediately went crazy, pulling out their weapons and firing madly at the two apostles. They had plenty of experience and knew that if they were to charge forwards like bees, they would only rush to their death. Only by having Huoran, their own peak evolver, to hold them off, the rest of them could find the chance to take them out. "Are you guys apostles?" Just as the two brothers were preparing to slaughter the rest of the 3rd Brigade, a voice resounded. "Leader! Leader is here! Long live Leader!" The moment the voice resounded, the entire 3rd Brigade cheered out in an earth-shaking roar. In the past, they had been Yu Zhong's enemies, but even then, they were full of respect for him. When on the battlefield, as long as Yu Zhong came personally, they would achieve victory. With such an aura, not only did they roar out in triumph, their morale was pushed high again. Any troop that had victories and glory under their belt would be able to grow even more in confidence with each additional victory. At the same time that Yu Zhong appeared, 8 high-level treants, 2,000 low-level treants of above level 30, as well as the 10 Type 3 treants charged out and engaged the Koji soldiers. Wilson and Wade stared fixedly at Yu Zhong. This man was their target. As long as they could kill this man, they would have done a great deed for their organization, and their position in the kingdom of God would be further cemented. Their resources would be more as well. The apostles were the strongest existences of the kingdom of God. However, there were only 12 apostles, each of them representing the peak level of power. The closer the number was to 1, the stronger they were. Wilson and Wade were the last 2 apostles, and they sought to gain a better ranking and foothold. Only then they would gain more resources. Wade eyed Yu Zhong with a look of excitement. "You're Yu Zhong? You'll die here today. I will use your head as my wine cup. A cup made out of the skull of an expert on the level of us apostles. It truly makes me excited. Ha ha! Go to hell." 10 strings had already shot out from behind Yu Zhong, making their way towards his head. Wade had only about a 2 km distance in handling the transparent lines. Within that distance, the strings could even pierce the hulls of armored vehicles. He could also assassinate numerous experts. Before he had become an apostle, he had made us of this ability to wipe out plenty of strong enemies. The line moved, and Yu Zhong was filled with a bad feeling. The possibility of death loomed in his heart, and his body was surrounded by a green radiance, as the bronze spiritual bell protected him. The 10 transparent lines slammed into the shield, and there was a grating sound of metal striking metal. "You're an evolver that makes use of strings." Yu Zhong discovered that ordinary people could never make out the transparent lines. "Kill him!" Wade and Wilson both pointed at Yu Zhong and roared. The remaining divine envoys and envoys in waiting charged at Yu Zhong together with the rest of the judges. Yu Zhong watched them and coldly laughed as he ordered, "Fire the cannons." Hong! 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 With loud bangs, a volley of heavy artillery came raining down on the elites of the kingdom of God, blasting many of them into pieces. 300 soldiers were hiding behind cover, armed with laser guns, and they began firing at the Koji soldiers. Many laser beams shot out towards the Koji soldiers, and one werewolf was even turned into a sieve with multiple smoking holes on his body. One of them directly pierced his spine, and he crumpled to the floor. Wade saw the 300 soldiers appeared with laser guns, slaughtering his subordinates, and he roared out in shock, "How is it possible? You should only have 500 laser guns. How could you have an additional 300 more?" In the reports on Yu Zhong, the Kingdom of God thought that Yu Zhong only had 500 laser guns, and the Central Plains weren't equipped to manufacture them. They had seen that Yu Zhong's forces had fought off the wave of mutant beasts with all the laser guns they assumed Yu Zhong to have. That was why they had launched their attacks. "Your information is out of date." Yu Zhong laughed coldly and opened his palm as a terrifying devil flame dragon shot out towards Wade. Wade's expression turned ugly, and he retaliated by sending his strings towards Yu Zhong from different directions. At the same time, more strings shot in front of him to form a huge shield. The dragon made out of devil flame swallowed the shield, and in a flash it was incinerated. Without stopping, the devil flame continued to pounce towards Wade. Yu Zhong's flame ability was precisely the bane of Wade's ability, as the flames could burn the wires that Wade controlled. Other abilities could not do the same. Wade waved his hands, and a shield of light appeared in front of him. The devil flame dragon exploded on the shield of light and shattered it. As for Wade, he had retreated dozens of meters. Wilson's eyes flashed coldly and he conjured up a blast of air from behind him, sending him hurtling through the air towards Yu Zhong. He pointed at Yu Zhong and sent 7 sharp blades of air towards him. Yu Zhong had already activated his shadow steps and bone-encompassing armor, and though he could not see the air blades, he had already sensed them through his danger perception and abundant battle experience. He pulled out his sharpest weapon, the flame blade made of the claw of the flame bird, and slashed apart 6 of the air blades with a burst of flames. The last air blade managed to slam into his left shoulder, breaking the bone armor but was stopped by the Type 4 mutant sea snake hide underneath. Chapter 681 Collapse. Chapter 681 Collapse. Yu Zhong was also sent flying back a few meters due to the powerful skill. By Shaoxing, who had already evolved into a strength and agility dual attribute evolver, shot towards Wilson with a cold look, bringing his blade down. Trash. Die. Wilson's attack was broken and his eyes burned with a furious gaze. He pointed towards Bai Shaoxing, sending another 4 air blades towards him. A suffocating pressure enveloped Bai Shaoxing and his face fell as he slashed out with blade beams, while retreating quickly. The 4 air blades managed to breach his attacks and landed on his body. One in particular actually pierced through the Type 3 mutant beast hide on his body, leaving a deep wound as fresh blood flowed from his shoulder. Bai Shaoxing looked at Wilson with a look of shock. Strong? This is an apostle of the kingdom of God? Truly on another level. Yu Zhong had led his troops to launch a night raid on the 2 apostles the other time, and it was due to Yin Shuang that managed to fend off one of the apostles, while the rest of the soldiers had injured the other apostle. As Yin Shuang was tied up with the Type 3 mutant beast, these 2 apostles had appeared with their incredible fighting prowess, and none of Yu Zhong's subordinates could handle them. It was precisely because of the apostles' strengths that the kingdom of God was able to expand in so many areas. As long as an apostle appeared in a local area, there would be almost no trouble whatsoever. Each of them was on par with an entire elite battalion. They could single-handedly destroy a faction of 10,000 with no problems. Yu Zhong retreated slightly, his eyes flashing, and he barked, "Qing Wu. Do it!" A 2m tall blue, human-shaped biological armor suddenly appeared with a 1.5m long blade, slashing at Wilson with a bright green blade beam. Fast! Wilson's face finally fell, and he even felt a sense of danger for the first time. He was forced to retreat, his right hand extending out. 7 sharp blades of wind that could pierce through even the hulls of armored vehicles fired at the blue armor. Qing Wu was controlling the biological armor within, and she did not dodge the incoming air blades. Instead, her eyes flashed with a hint of madness. Her blade came slashing down, slicing apart 2 wind blades before she continued towards Wilson. The remaining 5 wind blades landed on the blue biological armor and caused deep gashes, but ultimately not slicing through nor damaging the suit. Wilson flipped his hands, and a bright shield appeared, blocking in front of him. The terrifying blade came slashing down on the white shield and split it apart. As the blade continued through its trajectory, Wilson's level 4 defense vest was sliced through, and his right arm was chopped off. Qing Wu had chosen to strengthen her sword qi as her path. Her selected job was the swordsman, which allowed her to evolve her skill into the level 4 sword radiance. After enhancing sure kill skill, when she activated it, it was truly unbridled and uninhibited, slashing through the Type 4 mutant beast hide like it was nothing. However, in training this skill, there was a requirement, which was to give up all long-range attacks. After Ji Qingwu learned this skill, she had no way of picking up any other long-distance skills through the system. It hurts. It hurts. Wilson's face was contorted in pain as he grabbed what remained of his right shoulder, and a huge pocket of air blew him up into the sky. Ji Qingwu eyed Wilson coldly as he was forced away by her. At the next instant, an empowered bullet shot through the skies, blasting at Wilson. Wilson suppressed the pain and conjured another shield, forcefully defending against that shot. "Wade, retreat!" Wilson roared out as he commanded the air around him to propel him through the sky. "It's too dangerous, these uncouth yellow monkeys are truly something, seems like we need the first apostle here." Wade's heart was shocked, and he abandoned the rest of the Koji soldiers, rushing into the distance. These apostles were truly strong, but they were more afraid of death than most others. As long as they remained alive, they could enjoy life's pleasures, but if they were to die, they would have nothing. And since each and every apostle was an important tool of the kingdom of God, the Koji would not blame them. Even if they decided not to be in the Koji anymore, they could easily become high-ranking members of any other factions. Under such circumstances, with the exception of a few apostles, the rest were all selfish, and once they felt any danger to their lives, they would choose to retreat. They fled real quick. Yuzhong watched as Wilson and Wade both abandoned everything with such decisiveness and was shocked. The escape of the two apostles caused much mayhem and chaos within the kingdom of God soldiers. The remaining divine envoys and envoys in waiting immediately fled as well. The judges and adjudicators were plunged into despair, and some became enraged and fought with more vigor, while others threw their weapons down to surrender. Some chose to flee. As Yuzhong was intending to execute all of them, the troops of the Alliance fell back from their defense post like a surge of flood waters. The Alliance was not comparable to the troops of Yuzhong, and they were already holding on with all their might. After Zhang Jianxing was assassinated by Erek, the troops crumbled without command. Zheng Delong and Su Xing, he were both peak-level evolvers with impressive fighting strength. However, the brains behind most of the operations on the ground had been Zhang Jianxing. With the death of the brains, the huge troop was easily swatted around by the mutant beast horde. The thousands of soldiers of the Alliance fled in different directions, chasing behind them were the mutant beasts. No! One soldier ran slower than the rest, and dozens of mutant rats immediately pounced onto him, knocking him to the ground. In an instant, countless mutant rats came scurrying, completely burying him out of sight. When they left, there was only a pile of bloodied bones. A Type 2 mutant bullfrog of about 4 m tall continued to hop quickly, its elongated tongue shooting out once in a while to latch onto some unfortunate soldiers, sucking them into its mouth. It then clamped down hard with its mutated sharp teeth, crushing the soldiers before gobbling them. Zheng Delong and Su Xing he fled quickly, and they instantly jumped over the rest of the soldiers, making their way out of town. As Zheng Delong was about to escape successfully, the castle-like mutant giant turtle activated its innate ability, firing out a terrifying mist of frost. Wherever the mist touched, everything would be frozen solid in an instant, turning into shiny ice sculptures. Zheng Delong was caught in the mist, and he immediately froze. Within the ice sculpture, his expression of shock could be seen. Su Xing he saw this and his face turned pale. With a flicker of his body, he disappeared into a house within the town. By now, the entire town had been surrounded by the mutant beast. Those soldiers that tried to flee out were easily picked off. Under such circumstances, the Alliance soldiers could only flee towards the defense post of Yuzhong's troops as it was the safest. The disorder caused the soldiers of the Alliance and Kingdom of God to be squeezed together, and both immediately engaged in a slaughter among themselves. Yu Zhong took a look at the chaos and his eyes blazed with fury. The kingdom of God is truly damnable. Originally, the Alliance and Yu Zhong's troops could still somewhat hold off the mutant beast horde. However, the balance was broken because of the interference of the kingdom of God, and even Yu Zhong's troops were plunged into danger. If they were not careful, Yu Zhong's troops might end up being annihilated. Save me! Let me through! Help! The soldiers of the Alliance rushed past the Koji soldiers and tried to plead with the soldiers of Yu Zhong. Behind them were the mutant beasts, and in front of them was dense gunfire. They could only beg Yu Zhong for help. Yu Zhong went to a corner and roared out, "All of you come here. Put down your weapons and get in orderly." The soldiers of the Alliance all heaved a sigh of relief and came to the designated point to put down their weapons. The judges and adjudicators of the kingdom of God also raised their hands and called out, "We surrender! We surrender!" Being abandoned by the two apostles, those elite soldiers of the Koji felt despair. They didn't want to die in the jaws of those mutant beasts as well. These elites of the kingdom of God might be Aryans, but they were also humans and feared death, just like anyone else. After being deserted by their leaders, their fighting spirit plunged. Yu Zhong pondered a while and chose to accept the surrender of the Koji elites. "Come over here, and put down your weapons before lining up orderly." Chapter 682. Fierce Battle with the Type 3s. Chapter 682. Fierce Battle with the Type 3s. The Koji elites also began to put down their weapons and submitted to Yu Zhong. At this time, the mutant giant turtle turned its head and looked at Yu Zhong's side. It opened its huge mouth and shot out the freezing mist again. As the cold air churned, a number of elites of the Koji and soldiers from the 3rd Brigade froze solid. Yu Zhong glanced at the mutant giant turtle and hollered, "Fire the cannons!" Hong! 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 A number of heavy cannons immediately rained down upon the area that the mutant giant turtle was at, blasting dozens of the Type 2 mutant beasts around it into pieces. As the dust cleared, a huge chunk of ice appeared in Yu Zhong's eyes. Within it, the Type 3 mutant giant turtle was uninjured. It was just that the ice was shattered all around it. The Type 3 mutant giant turtle was extremely slow, and even at its maximum speed, it was only about 10 times faster than an ordinary human. However, its innate ice ability was extremely strong, using it to turn other Type 3 mutant beasts into ice, and as defense, it can wrap itself such that even cannons could not damage it. Even so, withstanding that volley of attacks had depleted much of the Type 3 mutant giant turtle's ability, and it could not utilize its innate ability for the time being. On the other side, the Type 3 mutant dog had finally been defeated by Yin Shuang as its corpse dropped into the town. A number of soldiers quickly came forward to bring the body away to deal with it. Every single part of the Type 3 mutant dog was a treasure, and Yu Zhong would not allow it to be devoured by other mutant beasts. When the Type 3 mutant dog was killed by Yin Shuang, the Type 3 Likoi and Type 3 gold-scaled Rat King charged at her. "Great! Since you're all Father's enemies, I'll pummel all of you." Yin Shuang watched the approaching Type 3 mutant beasts, and her beautiful eyes flashed with an excitement. The battle lust in her blood boiled, and her entire being leaped into the air, bringing her fist whistling towards the claws of the two Type 3 mutant beasts. Following a terrifying shockwave, the Type 3 mutant Likoi and gold-scaled Rat King were both sent flying by Yin Shuang, and they both spat out blood. Shockingly, these two close-combat Type mutant beasts were not a match for Yin Shuang even after joining hands. Just as Yin Shuang blasted the two Type 3 mutant beasts back, the huge Type 3 black-scaled ferocious boar turned its attention to her and opened its mouth to fire its innate ability. It was a powerful sound wave that was condensed into a ball like a cannon that hurtled towards Yin Shuang. Without enough time to react, Yin Shuang bore the full brunt of the sound wave, and her little figure trembled slightly, losing control for the first time. The Type 3 black-spotted spider immediately sprang forth and channeled its own ability, which was its silk, turning into spikes even sharper and tougher than steel beams. As Yin Shuang was still reeling from the sound wave, her body was numb and she could not control herself. At the next moment, those silk spikes shot and pierced into her. While her defense was terrifying enough to block the impact of guns and cannons, faced with those sharp spikes, she was helpless. "It hurts! It hurts! Father, I'm in pain." Yin Shuang's face contorted in pain when she was pierced by those spider silk, and tears flowed down her cheeks, while blood trickled from her lips. The current state that Yin Shuang was in right now was pitiful, just like a doll that had been toyed with till it was ragged. The Type 3 black-spotted spider tugged once forcefully, pulling Yin Shuang towards it. Suddenly, there was a large burst of flames in the skies, turning the spider's silks into cinders. Yu Zhong appeared by Yin Shuang's side and held her tightly in his arms. He saw the numerous wounds caused by the Type 3 black-spotted spider, and the frail-looking Yin Shuang, his expression full of heartache as he spoke. "I'm sorry, Yin Shuang, I came late." Yin Shuang didn't look like a fierce monster that could punch two mutant beasts away right now. Instead, she looked like a broken little girl. Yin Shuang saw Yu Zhong's face and her eyes lit up with happiness. "You're not late, Father. Father is really Yin Shuang's hero. Yin Shuang loves Father a lot." "Turn to ash." Yu Zhong turned to face the Type 3 black-spotted spider, and with a ferocious look, he sent a terrifying tornado of devil flames towards the mutant beast. At the same time, a number of laser beams fired at the other Type 3 mutant beasts, preventing them from assisting the Type 3 black-spotted spider. The Type 3 black-spotted spider seemed to sense the imminent threat of death, and opened its mouth to spit out a huge amount of silk that was even tougher than alloy towards the approaching flames. As the spider's silk came in contact with the flaming tornado, it instantly sizzled and turned to ash, and soon, the Type 3 black-spotted spider was also enveloped by the flames. As the flames disappeared, there was only a beast nuclei on the ground. After killing the Type 3 black-spotted spider in a single strike, 2 gusts of wind blew towards him forcefully, as the Type 3 Lycoi and Type 3 gold-scaled king rat charged at him with a terrifying speed. Their claws made to slash towards his head with the speed of sound. Currently, Yu Zhong's arms were wrapped around Yin Shuang, and he had no means of facing the 2 Type 3 mutant beasts at the same time. Right at this time, from the dark, a small Odachi slashed out with a profound beam, slashing onto the Type 3 Lycoi. In a flash, Tenpy Osaka was knocked back dozens of meters by the immense strength of the Type 3 Lycoi. Her Odachi was also sent flying away. After all, her strength was far from the Type 3 mutant beast. However, the strike of the Type 3 Lycoi was also deflected by Tenpy Osaka. At this time, Ji Qingwu came slashing down on the Type 3 Lycoi with her blue biological armor, and the mighty sword beam sliced the Type 3 Lycoi in half. A blue treasure box appeared beside the corpse of the Type 3 Lycoi, and the beast nucleus was sent flying into Yin Shuang's hands. Yin Shuang looked at the nucleus, and her eyes flashed with a gleam. She threw the nucleus into her mouth and began to chomp on it. The nucleus that was impervious to even the slash of Ji Qingwu was crushed into pieces by Yin Shuang before she swallowed it. The moment she consumed the Type 3 nucleus, Yin Shuang's wounds that were caused by the Type 3 black-spotted spider began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, her body also grew about 1 centimeter. On the other side, facing the slash of the Type 3 gold-scaled rat king, Yu Zhong flipped his available hand, causing a shield of light to appear and block the strike forcefully. After taking that single hit, the shield of light shattered. "Go to hell." Yu Zhong took the chance and raised his right hand to fire out a beam of fiery hot devil flame that condensed into a spear form that penetrated the head of the Type 3 gold-scaled rat king, before combusting within and frying its brain. As they eliminated these few Type 3 mutant beasts, the Type 3 Iron Bull managed to breach the area where the cannons were firing upon and galloped into the town. A number of laser beams that fired from all directions formed a net that pierced the body of the Type 3 Iron Bull, turning it into a sieve. A few beams penetrated its head, and halfway through its charge, it slumped to the floor, and it became the first Type 3 mutant beast that perished at the hands of ordinary soldiers. As it fell, from behind, the Type 3 ferocious ape came leaping forward together with the Type 3 mutant black gorilla. These two Type 3 mutant beasts had no innate abilities, but their strength, speed, recovery, and defense were on another level, and they didn't seem to have any weak point. The Type 3 ferocious ape charged into the camp of Yu Zhong's troops, and with a single palm, it slapped many soldiers dead. When the laser beams landed on its body, they only caused minor wounds. It wasn't enough to endanger its life. The Type 3 black gorilla pounced over to Yu Zhong. From a distance away, the Type 3 black-scaled ferocious boar had also come to a stop, as it opened its mouth to fire a soundwave blast at Yu Zhong. Yu Zhong had already experienced the might of such an attack before, and the moment the Type 3 black-scaled ferocious boar opened its mouth, he had activated his shadow steps and dodged to the side. The soundwave also had its weak point, which was that it could only travel in a straight trajectory and could not be manipulated to turn. The soundwave blast landed in an area, causing a number of the elite soldiers to bleed from their orifices and die. They were not as hardy as Yin Shuang after all. Yu Zhong had just moved, when the Type 3 black gorilla appeared in front of him, its fist punching towards him with the pressure of MT Tai. Right at this moment, Yin Shuang leaped up from Yu Zhong's embrace and lifted her tiny fists to meet the punch from the Type 3 black gorilla. Hong! Following a powerful impact, the Type 3 black gorilla was sent flying about 5 meters, while Yin Shuang also flew back about 7 to 8 meters. Chapter 683. Su Xing He Joins. Chapter 683. Su Xing He Joins. Ji Qing Wu controlled the biological armor to step down, her leg leaping onto the head of the Type 3 mutant black gorilla. She then controlled the huge sword in her hand to pierce down into its head. The mighty sword radiance tore a hole into the skull of the Type 3 mutant black gorilla, slicing its brain into two. With a flicker, Ji Qing Wu disappeared from on top of the Type 3 mutant black gorilla. The massive mutant beast that was the size of a fortress slumped down lifelessly. The other Type 3 ferocious ape suddenly appeared in front of Yu Zhong, swinging its mighty fist at him. The speed of the Type 3 ferocious ape was too fast, Yu Zhong had no way of dodging. His eyes flashed, and a thick dark dou qi enveloped his entire body. In a blink, he used his shadow steps, reaching speeds exceeding the sound barrier. He twisted and leaped backward, at the same time, pulling out his flame blade to slash the fist of the Type 3 ferocious ape. The sharp flame blade managed to slice the fist of the Type 3 ferocious ape, leaving a deep gash. Yu Zhong himself was also sent flying back from the recoil, the flame blade also flying out of his grasp. As he flew back, the devil flames in his hand congealed into the shape of a spear, and he flung it with all his might. The devil flame spear shot towards the head of the Type 3 ferocious ape, exploding upon impact and enveloping its head, frying its brain into cinders. With its death, the total number of Type 3 mutant beasts dwindled down to 3, the mutant giant turtle, the black-scaled ferocious boar, and the Type 3 red leopard. The strange beast atop the Type 3 red leopard looked towards Yu Zhong coldly and frowned. Hong! 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 The intense volley of cannon fire continued without stopping, blasting countless mutant beasts into pieces. At the same time, due to the death of the Type 3 gold-scaled rat king, the sea of mutant rats were broken apart, as the critters began to flee in different directions. The remaining mutant beasts were also baptized by the laser beams that met them right after the blanketing artillery fire. Upon seeing all these, the strange beast atop the Type 3 red leopard let out a shrill howl. When they heard the howl, the rest of the mutant beasts quickly retreated like a flood. The strange beast eyed Yu Zhong deeply, before turning around and disappeared into the night. Seems like yet another terrifying opponent has appeared. Yu Zhong watched the retreating mutant beasts and his brows furrowed. This time, in order to fight back the mutant horde, Yu Zhong had brought along a large amount of ammunition. Had they continued to surge forwards, he could easily wipe them out. Since he held the upper hand, as long as they held out till daytime, he could even call for the reinforcements of the assault helicopters to rain hell upon the mutant beasts. Now that the mutant beasts chose to retreat, he was full of trepidation. In fact, the mutant beasts were stronger than zombies. If they also had a commander with a human-like intelligence, it would be a terrifying thing. The ordinary soldiers did not consider so much. The moment they saw the retreat of the mutant beasts, all of them erupted in cheers, and they knew they had fended off their enemies successfully once again. Bai Shaoxing appeared by Yu Zhong's side, wrapped in gauze, as he asked, "Leader, do we continue towards the granary?" Yu Zhong's eyes turned cold as he replied, "No. We will eradicate the Greater China Alliance now. They dare to work together with the Kingdom of God. What imbeciles! If we let them live, they will pose a problem to us." This time, due to their collusion, Yu Zhong's troops had suffered greatly. Hua Ran's 3rd Brigade had lost over 600 men. After all, the 3rd Brigade only had 3,000 men at first. They were all made up of old veterans that had followed Hua Ran through countless battles. 600 elites who had abundant experience were killed off in this battle, and this was a huge blow to Hua Ran's forces. Other than the 3rd Brigade, Yu Zhong also lost another 20 evolvers to the 2 apostles. If it wasn't for capturing these huge elite force of the Koji, Yu Zhong could have been considered to have suffered a great loss as well. The most important point was that Zhang Jianxing was the core of the Alliance's military. With his death, the Alliance only had 4,000 soldiers left. They were basically a motley bunch without a capable leader. After resting an entire day, Yu Zhong sent out his troops to transport the numerous mutant beasts' corpses behind and sent the injured soldiers back. As to the corpses of his enemies, they were fed to the mother tree, becoming its nourishment. Yu Zhong would only respect his own soldiers, while he had no mercy nor pity for his enemies. At the same time, he deployed troops towards the base of the Alliance. He was still of the idea of coexisting with the Alliance. However, after everything, the Alliance was basically helpless against him. He also did not want to leave this cancer to fester. Su Xing he saw that Yu Zhong's army had dropped all notions of advancing towards the granary, and his heart sank. Is he finally going to act against the Alliance? There's no one who can stop him now. Su Xing he was one of the upper echelons of the Alliance and knew the capabilities of the soldiers. Having lost their general, there was no one else who could lead them. Most of the commanders inside had obtained their posts through connections, and while they could somewhat deal with zombies in towns, fighting Yu Zhong's troops was a different thing altogether. After pondering for a long while, his eyes shone with a resolute gleam. That's right. This is also a chance. Once he swallows the Alliance, there will be no one who can stop his expansion in the north. It might not be just a dream for him to unite the entire country anymore. If I join him now, I might be part of the founding team. With Su Xinghe's strength, it wasn't difficult to gather a few hundred people and become his own local warlord. However, he wasn't happy with just doing something on such a small scale. He knew that even if he did so, and could possibly enjoy himself in some remote corner, once Yu Zhong succeeded in conquering the country, he would not allow Su Xinghe's faction to exist anymore. Even if he were a peak-level evolver, facing all the peak-level evolvers of the country, he wasn't much. Having learned something in life, Su Xing he had been a director before the apocalypse as well. He was clear on the splendor and allure of power and authority. He wanted to become an official, and thus, he decided to join Yuzhong. Su Xing he was led by a soldier to Yuzhong, before respectfully greeting him, "Leader Yuzhong, I'm Su Xing he, I hope to be of assistance to leader." Yuzhong eyed the man in front of him, his eyes flashing. "You're that Su Xing he? One of the 5 heads of the Greater China Alliance?" Yuzhong had not expected that one of the 5 leaders would take the initiative to submit to him. "Yes." Su Xing he chuckled, before he revealed his cards. "I am able to hand the entire alliance to you. While the leader to the rest is Shimen Tianxiong, the true pillar is Zhang Jianxing. Because of his death, while the alliance might still exist, it would never be a match for you. However, there are a number of experts within. If you were to still forcefully swallow the alliance, you might suffer some casualties as well. Furthermore, those who will suffer will be the ordinary citizens. If you were to attack the alliance, most of the survivors would suffer. In this current world, humans are the most precious resource. I know, leader, you wouldn't want to see too many deaths as well. As long as you pass the responsibility of convincing the alliance to me, I will make sure to deliver." Su Xing he spoke, a hint of fervor in his eyes. Yuzhong also agreed that Su Xing he had a point, and he chuckled. "Fine. What would you want?" Su Xing he's eyes were practically ablaze by now. "I know, leader, your current system is martial law. I hope to be able to become a lieutenant colonel and help to lead troops in your stead. Other than that, I would like to recommend Chan Wei Hua to be a major as well. Both of us are peak evolvers, and we can definitely be swords for you." Yuzhong saw the fiery ambition in Su Xing he's gaze and laughed slightly. "All right. I'll promise you. As long as you can hand the alliance to me, I will grant your wish." The positions of a lieutenant colonel and a major in exchange for over a dozen thousands of survivors as well as 2 peak-level evolvers was too good for Yuzhong to pass up on. Su Xing he replied, "Thank you, leader. I hope that as I conduct the operation, you will assign me troops to assist in the plan. Only with sufficient pressure, I will be able to ensure the alliance listens." "Okay." Yuzhong's troops continued to push towards the alliance, causing them to fall into panic. Some people who were smarter knew that the death of their general Zhang Jianxing meant that the alliance was helpless against Yuzhong. "Yuzhong is reaching, what do we do?" Within a secret base, Chan Wei Hua summoned his people and asked. Chapter 684. Swallowing the Alliance. Chapter 684. Swallowing the Alliance. One small-time leader looked at Chan Wei Hua and said, "Brother, Yuzhong's army is too fearsome. We're not his match. Most of the alliance's fighting force had been annihilated, even Zhang Jianxing had died. There's no hope in staying here, let's flee. With our strength, even if we leave here, we can find a corner to live it out well." "That's right. Brother, Yuzhong is truly too powerful, we're not his match. Let's flee." "Yeah, brother. If you're worried about the rations, we can go and steal some before leaving." One by one, the various ringleaders spoke up. None of them were willing to stay behind to fight it out with Yuzhong. Chan Wei Hua listened to them and his eyes lit up. He knew that it was suicide intending to fight against Yuzhong. However, he had over 40 beauties under his wing. As for the rest of them, some had at the very least 1 or 2, while the most could have a dozen. If they were to all flee, just their women would reach a few hundred. Such a huge troop would not be able to escape the grasp of Yuzhong's army. Chan Wei Hua knew that it was difficult for him to bring his troops to flee. The moment he attacked, other than a few experts, the rest would be forced to stay. His women would not be free as well. "Why should you run?" Right at this time, a voice traveled over, and the moment it sounded, everyone in the room became wary, turning to the direction. Su Xinghe stepped into the room and revealed a smile. Chan Wei Hua's eyes narrowed to a slit, as his entire body became tense. He was like a leopard ready to pounce as he stared at Su Xinghe in wariness. Su Xinghe, I want to leave, are you intending to stop me? Su Xinghe continued to smile. No. If you want to leave, by all means. However, I have got a suggestion. Who knows, after my words, you might not want to leave anymore. Chan Wei Hua saw that Su Xinghe had no intentions of stopping him and heaved a sigh of relief. Su Xinghe was also a peak-level evolver, and if both parties were to engage in a fight, they would likely draw. He had no intentions of fighting it out with Su Xinghe. Chan Wei Hua's eyes flashed as he spoke. Su Xinghe, Yuzhong's reach is extensive. Even Zhang Jianxing and the Kingdom of God couldn't do anything to him after teaming up. Such a fearsome person is not someone we can handle. No matter what you say, I will not stay. It's practically suicide. Do you want to leave with me? With our strength, we can carve something out for ourselves. Su Xinghe was also an evolver, and if a faction had two such powerhouses as their core, they could deal with plenty of situations. As long as it wasn't a mutant beast wave or a zombie horde, they could handle themselves. Su Xinghe laughed lightly. Why should we leave? Can't we just join Yuzhong? Join him? Chan Wei Hua immediately sunk into thoughts. He was worried about Yuzhong hunting him, that he never thought about submitting to him. Wei Hua, if you want to flee now, you're free to do so. Based on your strength, it's possible to go to a small village and be the local tyrant. However, did you stop to think, Yuzhong's influence will only continue to grow. Once he had conquered everywhere, you will need to recede your territory even further, otherwise, he will send troops to wipe you out. Till when will you continue to live like that? Plus, you can only do so much alone. There's still the issue about the zombie horde, the mutant beasts, rations, etc. Without a proper base, you can only continue to flee, and nothing else but flee. In the end, other than you, there will be a few dozen brothers. Those without enough strength will perish. Is such a lifestyle what you guys want? Yuzhong has already conquered the Central Plains and over 5 or 6 major cities. He has established the running of factories and farming, as well as a currency system and a working government. He is the only warlord with the most potential of uniting the entire country. Since he's still in the initial stages, if we were to join him now, after contributing, we might become founding fathers. Our future generations will stand to bask in our glory and achievement. If you don't want to choose this path and rather pursue a dog-like life, by all means. You can continue to cower in fear and live in the uncertainty of being swallowed by some other power or killed by a wave of mutant beasts. Su Xinghe rattled on and on with a strong logical reasoning. Hearing his words, Chan Wei Hua's expression seemed to perk up. He looked towards his subordinates and noticed that they were all swayed by his argument already. After all, everyone wanted to live a better life. No one liked to live like strays, living day to day. Chan Wei Hua wasn't an idiot. He thought for a while and asked, Su Xinghe, you've already joined him, right? Su Xinghe chuckled. That's right. I am a lieutenant colonel within his army now. Chan Wei Hua's subordinates looked at him with envy. Having become a light colonel under Yuzhong, his status was different. Chan Wei Hua frowned and asked, Then what if I join Yuzhong? Su Xinghe replied, If you join him, you get to keep all your private possessions. As long as you have the ability to feed your 40 women, you can continue doing so. At the same time, you will be a major under Yuzhong, and in charge of an infantry battalion. Chan Wei Hua's frown deepened. A major rank? Isn't it too low? Although he was secretly satisfied with the arrangements, he wanted to try his luck in haggling, mainly because he was unhappy with being under Su Xinghe. However, he was extremely clear that Su Xinghe had taken the initiative to submit first. That was why he got the longer end of the stick. Su Xinghe revealed a cruel smile. If you want to gain a better position, you'll need to prove yourself. If you can join me and present the entire alliance to Yuzhong, you'll naturally gain a better position. Qian Weihua swiftly made his decision. Okay. Su Xinghe, I'll work with you in bringing the alliance to Yuzhong. Within a meeting hall of the alliance's headquarters, Shimen Tianxiong and the rest of the upper echelons had gathered for a meeting, discussing how to deal with Yuzhong. Inside the hall, many of the officials were giving their own opinions, and everyone's faces were downcast. No one felt that they could withstand Yuzhong's assault. Shimen Tianxiong listened to their discussion, his heart heavy as he asked, "What's going on? How come Qian Weihua isn't here yet?" "I'm here. Sorry for being late." Following a bright laughter, Qian Weihua and Su Xinghe walked into the hall together. Shimen Tianxiong watched them enter together, and a premonition arose in his heart. His brows furrowed. Qian Weihua had a carefree look as he looked at everyone. "Don't panic, I've come with the method of dealing with Yuzhong." Shimen Tianxiong was shocked and asked in curiosity, "What is it?" The rest of the people also turned their gazes to Qian Weihua. "The method is to let Shimen Tianxiong die." Qian Weihua laughed indifferently, and a coin shot out like a cannon, piercing Shimen Tianxiong in the head. There was a look of shock on Shimen Tianxiong's face as his body slumped to the ground lifelessly. Su Xinghe instantly exploded out with 10 pieces of steel that pierced the 6 guards beside Shimen Tianxiong. They were caught unprepared, and although they weren't weak evolvers, they were still assassinated by Su Xinghe. At the same time, there was gunfire from outside, as Su Xinghe and Qian Weihua's forces launched a swift assault on the soldiers of Shimen Tianxiong. Under that sudden attack, Shimen Tianxiong's forces were annihilated. The rest of the upper echelons watched the proceedings in horror and shock, not knowing what to do. Under the heavy suppression of Qian Weihua and Su Xinghe, they didn't dare to move. Qian Weihua turned to survey everyone present and chuckled, "Don't worry, those who want to live better listen up. Su Xinghe and I have submitted to Yuzhong. We hope that everyone can cooperate, otherwise don't blame us for being merciless." Everyone saw that Shimen Tianxiong had already died, and they had no intentions of rebelling, looking on quietly as Qian Weihua and Su Xinghe cleared the close buddies of Shimen Tianxiong. After eradicating all potential trouble, Su Xinghe sent someone to handle the alliance while sending someone else to invite Yuzhong's army in. Qian Weihua immediately saluted Yuzhong in respect when he saw him. Qian Weihua greets leader Yuzhong and is willing to serve. Yuzhong chuckled, "Well done. Qian Weihua, from now on, you're promoted to the rank of lieutenant colonel." Qian Weihua was delighted and responded enthusiastically, "Thank you, leader." Yuzhong stared at him and said, "Qian Weihua, since you're already my subordinate, you have to follow my rules. My army is a proper one, not one that anyhow does things. Military men have to abide by the military laws, is that clear?" Qian Weihua's heart turned cold. "Yes." Su Xinghe came up to Yuzhong and reported, "Leader, I have someone here, whom I think you'll be interested to meet." He did not want to leave the rations in a single place. While that was going on, Yuzhong sent the newly established 5th Brigade together with the 4th Brigade to clear zombies, slowly expanding his reach towards the capital. On the other side, the defeat of the Kingdom of God's soldiers reached their headquarters, causing a huge wave among the elders of the Koji. "Erect that fool," he failed. 800 of our kids had actually ended up in that Yuzhong's hands because of that idiot Erect. What do we do now? Punish that Erect. Correct, punish him. He has to be put to death. The council erupted in voices of dissent. Those 800 adjudicators and judges were all Aryans and part of the Koji's fighting force. They were also necessary for the reproduction of their race. With such a force, they could easily conquer a city over at Africa. They could not give up such a force. As for Yuan-ing and the other foreign races, even if they were to be eradicated, the Elder Council would not make a big fuss. After all, it was easy to raise up another unit of these soldiers from their other bases. However, the troops that Erek had led were pure Aryans and precious people. After all, that 800 soldiers had clashed against the 3,000-strong 3rd Brigade, and they only lost 300 people but managed to kill 600 soldiers of the 3rd Brigade. Furthermore, of the 300 casualties, some had been killed by the mutant beasts and the elite evolvers of Yu Zhong's soldiers. The actual number that fell at the hands of the 3rd Brigade was only about 100. Without any external assistance, the Aryan unit could easily crush the 3,000-strong 3rd Brigade. That was how strong they were. The great Elder Jonas announced with difficulty, "Erek shall be put to death." Hearing his words, the rest of the elders regained their calm. One elder asked, "According to Wilson, there's still about 500 of our men in Yuzhong. What do we do about them?" "We have to save them." "How do we do so?" "They're already in his hands. If we continue to send people over, it will be just sending them to their death." "India. We need to transfer some soldiers from India to deal with Yuzhong. India can be considered to be our colony. We can deploy about 100,000 soldiers from there. It should be enough to eradicate Yuzhong. 100,000 foreign soldiers. This is the maximum that we can activate from India. Once we deploy them, our strength in India will suffer greatly. If we were to lose, India will also be lost. I am against this idea. I'm also against the idea. If we were to deploy troops from India, then we need to transfer some resources over. Just transporting them will take up too much logistics. By then, when we start the assault against Yuzhong, we will have to devote resources into the battle, and our plan to recover the capital in the city here will be delayed. This is not to our benefit. Negotiations. I feel that we should negotiate with him. Since cannons and weapons cannot help us achieve what we want, let's use negotiations. That's right. A powerful, united China may not be to our benefit, but the number of zombies in China is about 1.5 billion. It is a number that Yuzhong would need at least 10 years to deal with. Our main enemies are the zombies now, not other humans. Although it will be a pity to abandon China, for now, we definitely need to focus our efforts on reclaiming the major cities within our own country. The elders were all practical. The moment there didn't seem to be a solution to Yuzhong, they chose to negotiate. Jonas also came to a decision after some consideration. Let Anrite go and negotiate with Yuzhong to recover our children. The orders of the Kingdom of God soon traveled to China, and the branch there responded quickly, sending the envoy to Yuzhong. Anrite came up to Yuzhong and saluted. "How are you, Leader Yuzhong?" Yuzhong saw that it was Anrite and chuckled. "Anrite, it's you? Speak, what's your objective?" Yuzhong had negotiated with Anrite once in Vietnam before, and he had even stabbed them in the back viciously. Anrite knew Yuzhong's character and immediately got to the point. "Leader Yuzhong, I hope to buy back the 500 adjudicators and judges from your hands. We're willing to use 3,000 assault rifles and 50,000 rounds of ammunition to exchange for them." Yuzhong immediately responded, "I want 2 manufacturing lines of the Thunder Fighters, 2 multifunctional battle helmet production lines, as well as 10,000 tons of fuel. If you can meet my requirements, I will release them immediately." The Thunder Fighters and multifunctional battle helmets were great items. Especially the helmets, they provided adequate protection against rifles, and had night vision, navigation, analysis, battlefield scanning and other capabilities. The Kingdom of God could conduct operations in the night and achieve outstanding results because of the helmet. Anrite was taken aback and he laughed bitterly. "Leader Yuzhong, the Thunder Fighters are our newest research, and we only have 5 production lines. It is impossible to give them to you. The helmets can only be produced over in Europe as well. Even if we want to give them to you, we can't port it over. Chapter 686. Satellite Base. Chapter 686. Satellite Base. Yu Zhong's eyes flashed. All right. Get all those factions in China under your kingdom of God to submit to me, and hand over their weapons and resources. I'll release your men. The kingdom of God had many factions within China and were pretty active in China. Of course, even if they were to all work together, they weren't a match for Yu Zhong. However, if they were to react, they still posed a problem. Should Yu Zhong successfully swallow them up, he could truly become the conqueror of China. Anrai chuckled bitterly again. I'm sorry, I can't agree to that condition. The power that the kingdom of God had in China wasn't small. They had altogether about 27,000 soldiers. Anrai was naturally unwilling to hand them over to Yu Zhong. While most of them were ordinary soldiers, not having undergone any job changes, but they had already undergone tough military training and their combat power was still a notch above most normal soldiers. This was a sizable force, and the kingdom of God would not give it away so simply. Yu Zhong's expression turned extremely cold. Then what the fuck are you here for? Anrai turned silent. I can hand over all the factories from the Outer Mongolia in exchange for those 500 soldiers. Yu Zhong stared at him. Military factories? That's right. Outer Mongolia has about 20 ammunition production lines and 15 heavy artillery production lines. They could produce enough for most armored vehicles. Yu Zhong took the opportunity to propose a counter-offer. Add on another 5,000 rifles, 1 million bullets. I know you can afford that. As for the production lines, you guys will handle the transport. Don't bargain any further. Anrai grit his teeth and replied, Fine. The troops of the Outer Mongolia had already been defeated by Yu Zhong. Although the Koji still controlled much of the production lines there, they couldn't suppress the local factions for much longer. They had to clear out sooner or later, and since that was the case, it was better to hand the lines over to Yu Zhong than to those local militants. After completing his task, Anrai felt much at ease. Leader Yu Zhong, the Kingdom of God is extremely interested in the laser gun technology in your hands. They are willing to exchange the production techniques for the Thunder Fighters and multipurpose combat helmet for that technology. This will be beneficial to both our countries. We hope that you can agree. Yu Zhong immediately refused. No. Yu Zhong and the Kingdom of God were on different levels of technology capabilities. Even if he were to gain the secrets of the Thunder Fighter and multipurpose combat helmet, if he wanted to produce them, it was impossible within the next 2 years. After all, manufacturing an aircraft required many materials and time. Without the necessary capabilities, even if he had the blueprints, it was useless. After the deal was confirmed, both sides started to carry out their ends of the deal. A large number of production lines were delivered by the Kingdom of God into Yu Zhong's hands. Yu Zhong received them, together with 5,000 assault rifles and 1,000,000 rounds, before releasing the 500 Aryan soldiers back to the Kingdom of God. After an entire month, Yu Zhong finally managed to empty out the granary storage, and his troops managed to eliminate about 800,000 zombies. As they neared the capital, the number of zombies were increasing as well. An ordinary county might have a few 100,000 of them, and each time they launched an assault on a county, they would have to expend plenty of ammunition. However, Yu Zhong was not in shortage of production lines now, and in addition to the recently joined alliance members, every day, there was plenty of ammunition produced to support the constant war against the zombies. With the addition of the Outer Mongolia's production line, Yu Zhong's production speed had increased by a third. Every day, there was ammunition produced and sent to the front lines, allowing Yu Zhong's army to be constantly fighting, with more to spare and save. Qianyang County was extremely close to the capital, and currently, there was a vehicle fleet on its way there. The satellite base was in a location just right outside of Qianyang County. Yu Zhong was seated in a Hummer that had been modified, as he looked out the window serenely. He had come on this trip personally in order to obtain this satellite base. In his mind, the importance of this satellite base was equal, if not higher than, to the missile base. What he had gained within the missile base was not to be used lightly, whereas the potential of the satellite base was going to be extremely useful. All his communications and reconnaissance would level up. It's right here. Cheng Ziming brought Yu Zhong towards a barren mountain that seemed inconspicuous. There was a huge metal door right at the entrance of the mountain. He pointed to the door and told Yu Zhong, "The base is right below there." He continued to explain, "In fact, there is a city below which is extremely huge. When I was here working, the number of personnel was about 3,000. The base is well equipped with all sorts of functions. I think that there might be at least 2,000 zombies within." Yu Zhong looked at the door and said, "Open the door, Qing Wu." Ji Qing Wu put on her blue biological armor and pulled out that large sword, before slashing a few times at the door. A hole was soon carved out. One evolver muttered a spell under his breath and stretched out his hands. There was a flash of light and 8 hunting dogs appeared. He pointed to the door, and the 8 hunting dogs darted into the base. Not a problem. After an hour, the 8 hunting dogs came out and the evolver looked at them before nodding at Yu Zhong. Having ensured that there was no danger within, Yu Zhong brought his troops into the tunnel. Inside the tunnel, there was no light and Yu Zhong took the lead cautiously. Behind Yu Zhong, a number of flashlights were switched on. The party then soon made their way into the city. They discovered that within the underground city, there were all sorts of structures, just that there was no light and the entire place looked like an underground tomb. Yu Zhong surveyed the place and felt wary. He had also entered an underground city back at Ulan Mountain Range and had come across that strange parasitic creature. He turned to speak to Ji Qing Wu. "Qing Wu, go get some men to guard the entrance, do not let anything escape out. I'll go take a look." Ji Qing Wu's eyes flashed with worry. "Be careful." "Don't worry." Yu Zhong smiled at her, before carrying Yin Shuang on his back, and made his way further into the city. Yin Shuang had the combat strength of an apostle, and Yu Zhong had the capabilities to overwhelm an apostle himself. As long as they were careful and did not meet any Type 5 mutant beasts, it was hard for them to fall. Barren and silence, that was the description for the underground city. Yu Zhong walked along and could make out several broken windows. There were patches of blood on the ground, and it was obvious that there had been many deaths at the jaws of the zombies during the start of the apocalypse. The defense was tight in this underground city, but at the same time, it had acted as a huge cage, trapping the people within, preventing them from escaping. He did not come across any danger, but he couldn't help feeling a sense of caution. This was because he had not come across something that he should have already, the zombies. He would rather face tens of thousands of zombies than any of those mutant beasts that had intelligence. Kuang Lang. Just after Yu Zhong passed by a window, suddenly, dozens of S2S leaped out and charged at Yu Zhong. While he still felt wary, he didn't panic, and swiftly activated his shadow steps, slashing out with his crocodile tooth saw blade. The S2S that pounced over were instantly killed by him. Just as those S2S were dealt with, a number of L2S charged out from various corners, carrying H1S facing Yu Zhong. When those H1S opened their mouths, a number of fireballs fired towards Yu Zhong like cannons. Yu Zhong immediately dodged into a nearby shop when he saw the H1S. Just as he entered the shop, 3 Type 2 hunters leaped down from the roof, together with 8 S2S that were hidden within the shop. This was obviously a strategy that made use of the zombies hidden at every corner. If it were any ordinary evolver, they could not have dealt with the Type 2 hunters. Facing this continuous waves of attack, another hole appeared in mid-air, and 3 sharp bone spikes shot out from the hole, impaling the 3 hunters, nailing them to the wall. Yu Zhong sent out 8 instantaneous slashes, slicing the 8 S2S in halves. After killing those S2S easily, his eyes flashed with suspicious, "What is going on? When did the intelligence of these zombies evolve to this state? They even know how to set traps?" Even the smart huge-head mutant zombie had not thought to do so. Yu Zhong thought to himself, what if there's something like that Amaterasu inside here? Amaterasu was the only zombie with intelligence that Yu Zhong had encountered. He possessed human-like intelligence as well as a terrifying combat ability. At that time, Yu Zhong had only managed to injure him, instead of killing him. When he thought of the possibility of something similar appearing in China, he was worried. Chapter 687. The Woman Who Controls Zombies. Chapter 687. The Woman Who Controls Zombies. Shatter! As though under some command, the glass broke everywhere and a number of Type 2 zombies, emitting some horrid stench, charged into the shop. Yin Shuang suddenly became blank, and leaped away from Yu Zhong's embrace, jumping out of the shop. Yin Shuang! Yu Zhong watched Yin Shuang leaving him suddenly and was shocked. He quickly leaped after her. Yin Shuang was not only the most important combatant under Yu Zhong, but was also a little girl that was extremely reliant on Yu Zhong. He viewed her as family, and seeing such a change in her, he could not help but be flustered. Yu Zhong had just arrived at that building, when a devourer that was hiding appeared suddenly, as it opened its jaws and spat out its poisonous gas. Yu Zhong was taken aback. He quickly stopped his breath, and devil flame erupted around him to burn away the poison. He quickly slashed out at the devourer, slicing it into 2. Not good. I inhaled some. Yu Zhong had killed the devourer easily, but he realized his cells were starting to break down, as a dark poisonous mist emitted from his body. He was also started to lose consciousness. The toxicity of the devourer was extremely horrific. If it had been anyone else, they would have instantly turned into a zombie. Yu Zhong could withstand the change because of his high vitality. Even so, his cells were fighting against the infection with all their might. He might be a vitality-based evolver, but his body was still not immune to infection. At this critical juncture, Yu Zhong bit down on his lips harshly. The pain jolted him awake, and he quickly retrieved his G-type cure, quickly injecting its contents into his body. The moment the contents were absorbed, Yu Zhong felt his blood regaining its vigor and flow. At that moment, 8S2S pounced upon him, intending to bite down at his body. His hands lit up in flames as his powerful devil flame burst forth, enveloping the 8S2S. When the flames died down, only ashes remained. The 8S2S had disappeared entirely. Ah! Blue treasure box! After wiping out those 8S2S, Yu Zhong heaved a sigh of relief, and was about to continue up the stairs when he noticed a blue treasure box beside the corpse of the devourer. Yu Zhong was overjoyed and picked it up. The blue treasure box was extremely rare, even higher grade than the green ones. At the early stages, when there were a few Type 3 mutant beasts, they tended to drop a few. However, the world had mutated to a state where even killing those Type 3 monsters might not guarantee any drop. Most of the boxes that appeared were green, and blue ones were rare. Yu Zhong obtained a blue treasure box from the devourer. This caused him to be happy. With a flash, a pair of wings of about 7 m wide appeared in his hands. They were black in color, seemingly made up of some metal alloy, their edges sharp like blades, and the entire pair of wings was covered in mysterious runes, with a round pocket in the center. Level 6 treasure, dark wind alloy wings, able to block bullets of 14.5 mm. Upon equipping, allows the user to glide for a short distance from 20 m above the ground. Once provided with a Type 3 nuclei, the user can use the wings to fly. Can reach a maximum speed of sound barrier. Consumes energy for nucleus while flying. Good treasure. Yuzhong looked at the dark wind alloy wings and his eyes lit up with excitement. With this, he could fly and still battle in the skies. After all, there weren't many evolvers that could fly. Of the evolvers under Yuzhong, they numbered over 2,000, yet there were only 3 who could fly. One of them was a wind controller, the other were air controllers. In fact, they weren't really flying, just using their abilities to send their bodies into the skies. However, it could not be maintained for long. At most, they could do so for 5 minutes. Having gained this dark wind alloy wings, it could complement his other skills and allow him to fly. In any case, he wasn't lacking in Type 3 nuclei. As he stopped here to inspect his new equipment, the evolved zombies below were slowly making their way up. His eyes flashed coldly, and with a thought, a nether hold appeared in midair, and 10 sharp bone blades shot out, twisting and slashing into the group of zombies, turning them into mincemeat. White Bones killed the zombies, then stepped out of the nether hole, and guarded at the entrance of the building, according to Yuzhong's instructions. Yuzhong came to the second level of the store, coming face to face with 6 devourers crawling on the ceiling. They opened their jaws and shot out their tongues that were capable of tearing through armored vehicles. The crocodile Tooth saw a blade in his hand slashed out with multiple beams, causing 6 tongues to be severed as murky blood splattered everywhere. He then pulled out his stinger and fired 6 consecutive shots. Pung, pung, pung. Following the sound of gunshots, the 6 devourers had their heads blasted open and they dropped from the ceiling. After killing those 6 hunters, Yuzhong activated his bone-encompassing armor, his entire body encased in the bone carapace. He surveyed his surroundings, turning to fix his gaze on some broken windows. His eyes flashed coldly and he walked closer to take a look. All of a sudden, 4 Type 2 hunters leaped in from outside, opening their jaws and firing their tongues. 4 sharp spikes shot out from Yuzhong's shoulders, slicing through the tongues, while another 4 shot out from his chest, piercing the heads of the hunters, before flinging them away. Having gained intelligence, White Bones was able to utilize its skills effectively based on its own judgment to deal with enemies. Yuzhong looked out and noticed that Yin Shuang was currently shivering while kneeling in front of a figure, atop another building. That person was a beautiful woman in a long white dress, with a lush head of thick hair. Her skin was fair and her features were exquisite, yet she had a sense of being untouchable. Beside her stood 8S3S, 2L3S, and a devourer. Yuzhong opened his hands and a bone spike shot out, impaling the wall of the next building. As the bone spike retracted, Yuzhong was pulled towards the roof of that building. Yuzhong saw Yin Shuang shivering badly and he shouted in anxiety, "Yin Shuang, are you okay?" Yin Shuang turned to face Yuzhong, although her eyes were still blank. "Father, is she my mother?" "No. Yin Shuang, she is not your mother." Yuzhong turned to face that cool-looking beauty and charged towards her. He could tell that she was the one who was the cause of everything happening here. In a few breaths, Yuzhong had already appeared behind her, reaching out with his right hand to grab her pale neck. That act of grabbing her was ridiculously simple. He had in fact prepared a few countermeasures in case she acted out. It was as though she was just a normal person. Yuzhong exerted pressure and threatened, "Stop resisting and stop your controlling over my Yin Shuang." The cold beauty glared at Yuzhong hatefully and gritted her teeth. "Kill me, all you beast. Even in death, I will not become your toy." At this time, the 8S3S, 2L3S, and Devourer charged at Yuzhong. Yuzhong frowned slightly and released the beautiful woman, pulling out his huge black tooth blade, slashing out at the incoming zombies. With a powerful blade beam slashing out, 9 zombies were turned into mincemeat. At the same time, 2 powerful devil flame incinerated the brains of the 2L3s. When the beautiful woman witnessed this, her eyes also flashed with shock. She knew how powerful the zombies she was controlling were. She had made use of them to tear through a few overpowered evolvers, and to see Yu Zhong killing her trump card in such a casual manner, she could not help but be shocked. After dealing with the 11 evolved zombies, Yu Zhong pulled out his stinger and pointed it at her. I have no idea what kind of misunderstandings you might have towards me. I did not come here to capture you to be my toy. However, I'm not some nice guy. Stop trying to control my Yin Shuang, otherwise, I will not hesitate to blow your brains out. I think that if you were to die, your control over my Yin Shuang would be stopped. I don't like to kill without reason, but this does not mean that I will not kill. The beauty looked at Yu Zhong, touching her neck while snorting coldly, and stopped casting her ability. Yin Shuang, who had been kneeling and shivering, immediately stood up and leaped into Yu Zhong's embrace. Father? Father! You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.